Good evening, rabble rousers. Welcome to our very first live stream event. We appreciate all of you showing up. We've already got a lobby full of guests to join us. Folks that have been on the Blueprints of Disruption podcast this year. They've come on to share some stories, update us where they're at, and maybe take a look at 2023. I've got my wonderful comrades with me today as well, Santiago Hilu Quintero and Jay Woodruff. Together, we are the Rabble Rousers Cooperative, and we are responsible also for putting on the Blueprints of Disruption content that you've seen so far this year. Just a few housekeeping items, right? So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, just takes you a minute, click on that subscribe button. 60 seconds later, you can start making comments. Ideally, you're going to ask questions from our guests, so you can be the interviewers tonight. Ask them how they're doing. Maybe you've heard their episodes. You want to dive a little bit deeper in what they had to say. We're really eager to hear from you there. We've also got questions for our guests, so I'm excited to see a lot of them come back. I think I'm a little nervous this evening. It's been a while since I've been live, so bear with me, friends. I wanted to start by just sharing the story of Blueprints of Disruption a little bit. Some of you may have heard a handful of shows, but you don't really know how it all started or why and what drives us. So I'm going to start off this story, but it brings these two folks into it. And so they'll share their perspective on what it's like making this content and being a part of this team. So I don't know, back in early 2022, the folks at New Left Media approached me and asked if I wanted to do a podcast. And I was floored. I was like, nobody wants to listen to me. I guess at home, everyone gets sick of me talking politics. So I figure nobody wants more of that. And I felt like I was already kind of out there enough. Maybe people were sick of me, but they insisted. And I thought that was a great opportunity to do something different. Lord knows I was a little bit tired of electoral politics. If anyone's heard the Inside the NDP series, you'll know that already. So I jumped at the chance, to be honest, and I had to figure out what my podcast would be. What's the content going to be? Canadian politics is a little broad. And like I said, I was already kind of tired of Canadian politics. So my real love, my real passion, what I light up doing is activism and organizing. And I love learning from it. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are way better at it than I am. So I wanted them to be able to share their stories, right? So largely that's what the show is amplifying the stories of people doing the work. Disrupting the status quo, organizing their communities, providing mutual aid, all of this really great stuff. And I've met so many great people doing it. First, I get to meet Santiago. So he's my producer on the show. He has to sit there and listen to me over and over again and edit it and make it sound real crisp. And we get lots of compliments on the sound quality, Santiago. So I enjoyed working with him so much. And Santiago, am I easy to work with?
Very easy. Don't even
You don't have
don't
to
even
lie.
worry. No. It's not work for me. And I learn so much just every single time I get to sit down and edit one of the episodes. It's something that I would want to listen to if I wasn't the producer. So it's not a sacrifice for me at all. I enjoy it very much.
Thank you. So yeah, we started doing strictly calling in organizers and activists and asking them questions about their barriers that they face and how they overcome them and what inspires them. But then I also really like to talk about the NDP and critique them specifically. I'm sure you all know that. And I approached the team and said, I want to try something. I want to talk about the problems the NDP has and what it's costing the left. Specifically, I think I wanted to talk about the candidate crisis, is what we called it in the episode for the Ontario NDP. And the team was like, sure, give it a shot, see how it goes. And like, as soon as we launched that episode and promoted it just a tiny bit, it had the audience rate of like 4 times our previous episodes. And that's been consistently the case for all those, that whole series. So we've looked at, the ins and outs of that party greatly at this point. So if folks want to catch that content, it's a whole collection on our podcast. And it speaks to why I also prefer activism and organizing over electoral politics, right? But we wanted to provide folks the idea of what it's like in there. If you want to go do it, you know what to expect. If you don't, you feel perfectly validated now knowing what we all know. So, um, but yeah, I mentioned New Left Media. Circumstances changed there at some point, and Santiago and I both envisioned something a little bit different, uh, bigger than just a podcast. I mean, that's what we are right now, in product, but in our dreams, we are so much bigger, aren't we, guys? Like, so we started Rabble Rousers Cooperative, a media cooperative, with Jay Woodruff. Um, for me, it was no question once we did that I would bring Jay in. And I'm not sure I would have continued the podcast if Santiago hadn't been a part of it as well. So, Santiago, what was that like for you, kind of changing the mold a little bit and starting a cooperative?
I mean, for me, honestly, it was a very easy decision, right? When I so a bit of like my background, I'm currently a journalism student, and the reason I'm in journalism comes from my activism, right? I know that that's what I want to do with my life. I know that I want to try and make a difference, and I noticed that there was very independent left wing media in Canada at all. And when you look at the existing structures out there, the very top down media structures that exist in the mainstream, that doesn't leave a lot of room. I mean, it's very similar to like our discussions of electoral politics. Trying to like make a change within that system doesn't leave a lot of room for anybody. And I know that in doing things through a cooperative model with the amazing people who are here, that is some it's a place where we can make some noise, where we can try and shake things up a bit. And when I see like everything that Jessa that you have done, all of your activism, everything that you continue to do, your ability to bring so many people together, I know that this is the right team, and this is I have a lot of hopes for everything that we're gonna be able to do. Yeah.
I'm excited. Jay, do you want to just chime in here? Like you were part of the beginnings of Blueprints as well. I definitely couldn't have started it without your support. You helped me get some guests on there early on. And yeah, I was definitely determined to kind of bring you on board once we started something new because I feel like we're always on the same page there.
It was an easy decision because, yes, there's not a lot of media out there, but also it's not about a commentary on the daily happenings and interpreting our own views on what happened today. It's more like on the ground, grassroots stories with actual people doing things. So, that and being a cooperative, I was kind of concerned because I was reaching like an overload point, and to take on something and not want to let people down, not want to let you down, it was starting to get to a point where it's like I really don't know if I didn't want to say yes. I was trying to figure out the courage to say no, but
What?
it just wouldn't work because a cooperative that focuses on something different than what's out there all the time is just something. It is the perfect possible mix of things with the perfect mix of who knows where it goes, but the perfect mix right now of goals.
Yeah, no, definitely love and Blueprints of Disruption is a certain format for a podcast, but I think we envision something like a whole lot more. And right now, I know we're working on building a bit of a community of organizers and activists and sharing knowledge, and that's why, we brought a lot of our guests back on to see, if they can reflect on some of those lessons. I see we've got some in the lobby. I would hate for them to have to wait any longer. So perhaps we let's let in Tigra Lee, and she can introduce herself, and then we'll let Matt in. I see both of them there. Good evening, Tigra Lee. How are you? We can't actually hear you. You unmute your mic. We should warn people when they're in the waiting room that they're going to get sprung on. So
Yeah,
while
we don't really have a way of communicating in the room.
No, so yeah, this is our first live stream, obviously, you folks can tell. While Tigra Lee's trying to figure out their microphone, um, Tigra Lee came on with Des for an episode called Solidarity and Supports. We talked to them about, what it's like trying to do progressive work, mutual aid in rural Alberta and Saskatchewan. And that was a real fun episode. That was just our second episode. So I was pretty new at the interview process, but I know a lot of folks enjoyed that one. So Tigra's giving a sad face. Yeah, no, I still see that you're muted. Maybe let's call in Matt as well. Is that
Yeah,
okay, Santiago?
let's go for it.
Hopefully Matt's mic. All right, Matt, can you unmute your mic? All right.
Matt disappeared.
Well, Santiago, you talked about really enjoying Tigra Lee's episode.
Oh yeah, no, and that was one of, like you said, that was one of the first episodes. By the way, for everyone in the watching, I threw the link to the episode into the comments on the YouTube live stream. If anyone wants to check that out. Um, oh, Matt's back. Can you hear us?
Hi. Yep, you hear me?
We
Yeah, sounds
can.
good.
Good. Okay, I got that. That's 90% of what I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Work sure I'm logged in and my sound works. Right. That's 90% showing up as 90% of the battle.
Hi, Matt. So thanks for coming on again. It's been a while since we've talked. How's it
Yeah.
like being an author now? Your book is out. When you talked to us, you were working on the release. Now it's
Mm-hmm.
out. You've put a lot of work promoting. How's that going?
Um, I'm getting very good reception for the book. I admit I've not been, it's hard to really know what the word on the street is because I don't, it's not like people walk up to me and say, hey, I know you read your book. But it's getting very positive receptions from from the reviews it's been getting. It got a very positive review in Jacobin. It got a positive review in West Coast publication called the Michael Harris. The author Michael Harris gave it a very positive review as well. And on Rabble, Paul Weinberg gave it a good, and of course your podcast was a great opportunity I've had so far to really explain the story, tell the story. So it's been going well, and I think a lot of people are just very happy to have the whole what happened in the last 20 years kind of chronicled and explained, so we know we're kind of here, but people are we're here, but how do we get here? And it's there is a story rolling back. It really is a story of the rise of the professional, I guess, staffers, or the apparatchiks, sort of taking, seizing control of whatever of the grassroots nature of the party was demolished, was destroyed, or minimized
Matt,
Um,
get the book cover back in the camera frame again. I'm going to remind folks of the episode just for a second there. So we called it inside the NDP, like deliberate turn to center. You know, a lot of us often argue that it feels like the party's drifting to center, that they don't listen to grassroots anymore.
mhm,
And we get a lot of pushback sometimes from partisans that that's not true. But I feel like Matt's book there provides, I've called it before, the receipts, right? That validation that there were actually
mhm.
deliberate decisions publicly admitted to, you know, not it's
Yeah.
not rumors, um, that they would try to imitate the Liberal Party, both in its structure and its policy, and
Mhm,
that they would minimize the role of members so that
mhm.
paid consultants could make key policy decisions and what the campaign would look like. I felt like Jay should have been in on that interview, because he's been through the ringer with me in the NDP, very similar treatment and trying to defend our positions and our frustrations. Jay, I want you to chime in here for sure. Like, you got any questions for Matt, or do you want to maybe take a moment to thank him for providing all those receipts to people?
I do kind of have a fan sort of question to ask, because something I've dealt with is the longer you focus on this, the deeper you go, the more you realize, the more it's just destructive. Like it's unhealthy to get that focused and involved in the NDP. So during the whole time, is there stuff you had to leave out because it was just gonna take you down another rabbit hole? Was it? Do you have five more books worth of stuff? How did you get from start to, like, every question possible, because of knowing what I know and experience, and Jessa and other people, you had to trim a lot of stuff out of that book.
Yeah, I probably, I mean, I probably you could maybe there's 5 volumes on the on the on the on the assault on grassroots democracy, and I have
What
to
can you
say I
share now?
oh, I don't have any I don't have nothing rings a bell at the moment. Admittedly, I and I only know a fraction. I'm not, you know, I don't I don't I only know a fraction of what's going on in this party, and it's, you know, and I, you know, I've learned a lot. I mean, I haven't I mean, admittedly, since writing the book, I've kind of been taking a bit of a time out from political activism and involvement, so I haven't been following much of what's been going on with the Ontario NDP, for example, which I know
Nothing.
Jess has been, you know, has been persistent on, and, you know, and certainly it's grassroots activists like Jessa and others who have given me information. And I mean, if I had spoke, maybe it's unfortunate I didn't have a chance to speak to you before writing the book. So perhaps you have some stories. I as again I told what I could, and, you know, in 20 years in 200 pages. Um, and I, you know, I've certainly heard of, you know, I've certainly heard others. I don't, nothing, nothing immediately like comes to mind, but yeah, this is just the telling of, this is just, you know, this is there's I'm sure there's a lot more, but I think I capture the essence of what's happening, and particularly the, you know, the, you know, just like the, you know, because they're openly, you know, you can find they're pretty open about it in some ways. I mean, you look at, you know, you look at you read like the you read the memoirs. They, you know, they, you know, and they like Top and Levine have both written memoirs, and they're pretty explicit, you know, in what they believe in what they believe in, and what they, or what they or their vision, they believe is the right, you know, is where the party should go, and they're pretty explicit about that.
it's it's kind of ironic we're talking about like the toxicity of electoral politics, and Tigra has rejoined us here, so I'm going to call her into the discussion in a second. But the reason I think it's ironic is because, Tigra Lee, I'm going to bug you for a second, because when you were on, we were talking about all kinds of stuff, and I remember you, and because it kind of puzzled me, you're like, I'm not really political, right? Like, and I can't, like, I grew up in such a political household. I don't even know what that meant. We didn't get a lot of time to like develop on what that meant. But then I hear the news that I'll let you share with folks. And so I was like, oh, maybe she is political after all. So just kind of like, if you let's hopefully your mic is working and you can tell folks like what I'm talking about, what kind of announcement you might have in terms of political life. And, did something change between our interview and now? Do you have a different perspective on electoral politics? But let's see if we can get you into the discussion. No. No. Um, Sorry, Tigra. That's I'm just maybe just try to troubleshoot that mic as best you can. We'll keep you here. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So I don't want Tigra to lose the opportunity. Tigra's running for the Green Party in Alberta, right? So definitely like check out her social media stuff that we have linked and whatnot. But I think you'll find it interesting when you hear what kind of candidate she must be, because if you hear about the work that she's been doing in her community, it's unreal. And it's not very typical of folks who run for politics. And I mean, we like that, right? Because part of the problem is the representation we get is poor, right? Typically rich white folk who haven't really put much time into the community and don't really have that lived experience they need to make good policies. We talk about that a lot on our show, and that's why like folks feel alienated. Santiago, like how are you feeling about Tigger Lee going into politics? I feel like we're talking about her. She can't defend herself, but I did really want to feature her story either way. So, Tigger, is this okay? We're talking about you a little bit.
I mean, running for the Green Party in Alberta, that's definitely like that sounds like a lot to take on. So like I'm happy people like Tigra are taking up that challenge, especially in needs more environmentally driven politics, right? That's something that obviously like no province in Canada is doing well, and if any change can happen in Alberta, that would be so massive across the country. And obviously there's so many issues with the Alberta NDP. We've done so many of the Inside NDP episodes where, we've talked BC, we've talked Ontario. We haven't really gotten to talk about Alberta, but I know a lot of people out in Alberta who have been struggling to try and make an impact within that party. Um, Jessa, anything to add to that?
No, I'm just sorry. I was just trying to get Tigra Lee kind of helping her troubleshoot because I really wanted to hear from her on that. But yeah, no, I don't really know enough about Alberta politics. It would be really good timing if we had Jeremy Appel pop on like any second, because I know he does a lot of work there, and we are expecting him this evening to see like where is the Green Party in Alberta? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
is that a viable option? I'd like to ask Tigra Lee, when you run for a party that's really kind of on the outskirts, you often aren't running to win. And there's arguments about this. We've had this discussion with a few guests, but yeah, sometimes it's just like a service, to get a message out to be a point of representation. But I would I would be ecstatic if someone like Tigra Lee could make gains in terms of Alberta politics and, more community based ideas.
Tigra's back, but I don't think it's working still.
I'm so sorry, Tigra. And we don't want to stress you out either. We'll have to dedicate an Alberta politics live stream where we can, um, yeah.
We have
Sorry,
so many
Tigra.
things to cover. There'll be so many episodes about all the topics that we bring up today.
Matt, have you been following Alberta politics at all?
A little bit. Um, I'm, obviously, I know this is obviously that this is going to be the NDP, this for the NDP in 2023 is Alberta. Um, and it looks like to me it looks like to me that they're very much running, they're very much running a Biden style kind of we're just the party of all reasonable people need to get behind. Okay, we're the big tent of all reasonable people in Alberta kind of thing. It's kind of like they're we're the competent we're the competent and reasonable option. And given how off the spectrum the Danielle Smith is with her insane anti-vax views and so on. Um, they're obviously I can see why they're doing it, and maybe it is one of those situations where they will kind of get in based on that, but based on just everybody against all reasonable people, you know get behind this kind of thing. But certainly not seeing a lot of but I'm not seeing much. I'm not following it day to day. But it sounds to me they're not they're just counting on to kind of come back in based on Rachel Notley's personal popularity, and just the really far right drift of the of Daniel Smith and the Conservatives. But who knows where it's going to go. But this is if it's as a place for socialists and leftists, I'm not surprised that people are looking at the Alberta Greens and perhaps other options, because it's fundamentally a liberal, in the provinces, especially in the western provinces. The NDP is functionally like the Liberal Party of Canada.
Yeah, in
So
quite a few provinces,
yeah, quite
I
a
would
few. Yeah,
say.
in Ontario they really want in I guess BC, Alberta, and Manitoba they are. In Ontario they really 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 want to be. Kind of how I see it.
I think that's even more obvious now. But in terms of the Green Party, I think that's all over the place depending on where you are in the
Mm-hmm.
country. Because the interview we've got sitting in the can there, I had a discussion with Alex Terrell,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the leader of the Green Party of Quebec, who had been with the NDP and was disillusioned with them and went over to the Green Party, and they are what we call a far left party over there, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I was really pleased to hear the things that they included on their platform, and they even had the word socialist or
Mm-hmm.
socialism on their election signs. And I was like, "What?
Yeah. Wow.
We're not
That's
even
really
allowed,
good.
or
Yeah.
yeah, NDP members aren't even allowed to say that word anymore." So I can definitely see the draw of people uh, switching parties, but at the same time, Santiago, we've had a lot of evidence that the Green Party has that same kind of toxicity and structural problems.
Just ask Demetri Lascaris, right? I mean, that was a whole episode that we
Oh
did
wow.
really
Yeah.
early
Yeah.
on, and I remember because I was a Green member at the time, when Dimitri
Did I know
ran.
that?
I think I
Did
might have
have you
mentioned
admitted
it.
that to me before?
I think so. I
I
started
don't
off in
know.
I started off in the
I'm not
Greens, and then I
judging or
went
anything.
to um I figured that the NDP was a bit of a mess, and then it turns out the Greens are also a mess, and it's the same kind of establishment bullshit wherever
Yeah.
you end up, right? Like and that's kind of part of what makes what we do at Blueprints necessary and exciting, right? Because there's so many people out there who I meet who want to get involved in something. They don't know where to get involved. They see electoralism and they're like, I don't know if I really want to deal with that, which is a very,
So many
very
times.
fair feeling, right?
Yeah.
So, but once you okay, you want to get involved, not electoralism. What are you left with? There's not exactly like a guide for that. It's not obvious where to go, and that's part of the blueprints of disruption is showing people possible avenues where they can get involved, where they can help make a difference. That isn't necessarily these spaces that end up most likely leaving you burnt out, drained, and exhausted and frustrated, as it's happened to everybody sitting here right now.
Oh, burnt out. Was that a segue?
It can be.
Jay, Jay, I mean, are you ready to start a new party or what? I mean, that's the word on the street.
Let's see if Tigrely. Oh no, it didn't work again. We talked
It
about
is a
there would be
different
something
headset.
that went wrong that would not make sense, and this.
And
We did brace ourselves for technical difficulties, but why did it have to be Tigrid Lee? Why couldn't it be Jeremy? No, just kidding. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hi, great to be here.
Your mic works.
In all
Awesome.
honesty, though, Jessa,
You
I
popped
think-
in right away. Were you watching the live stream?
No, I was writing, and then I was like, oh, it's past 4. I should.
You forgot about us. We were actually just we were just talking about you because Tigrid Lee, even though she's on mute, not by choice, and she's running for the Green Party in Alberta. So Jay, we're gonna go to you in just 2 seconds, Jeremy, because I just asked Jay a question and now I've cut him off. But I think we're gonna go back to the Alberta politics bit.
I think what I've been seeing isn't. There's something that needs to change in the way that politics is done. A lot of people are feeling like partisan politics and the current structures and the current parties aren't working. I don't know if just a new party with the same structure is going to be any different. I don't know what, but I have this growing feeling that politics is going to change because more people are paying attention and want to be involved, but it gatekeeps and it gaslights, and people get involved and then instantly want out, or get involved and then don't see a path to actually accomplish things. So I don't quite know what it is. Maybe it's a new party just done different, but I have a feeling something is changing, and either the old guard is going to have to change and catch up, or whatever is going to replace it is coming.
So let me welcome Jeremy into the discussion. Jeremy was on an episode we called Contested Territory, the Canadian media. So it was not just independent media versus mainstream media, but it was also a discussion on right versus left. That seems very black and white description of it. It wasn't. It was a little more nuanced than that, trust me. But the idea was that, it was a bit of a battle to get space for leftist ideas in the media, and perhaps independent media was the best avenue for that. And so, yeah, Jeremy was definitely the best person to talk to about that. He's a fellow podcaster with Big Shiny Tunes. I know Santiago was just hitting it up with your squad. You had a fundraising event for the Hoser, and your team was there. So
Fun times.
welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. Oh, so you spoke alongside Eric?
I didn't speak. I was just there supporting, but I saw Eric. The whole team was there. Eric did a great job, and shout out to his production work as a fellow producer. Eric's really good at what he does.
Oh yeah, and he's gotten so much better since he started doing Tech Won't Save Us.
Oh yeah, no, and I was listening recently to the Hosers podcast.
Short Circuit?
Short Circuit, yeah, and no, it's great production value there, and there's so few of us who in this industry who can do that. So shout out to Eric. And that article that he wrote recently was really good for the Hoser about affordable housing in Toronto. People should definitely check that out. That's been getting out there quite a bit. Anyways, yeah, that's my spiel.
So what have you been up to, Jeremy, since we last spoke? Any developments? You still on Twitter, or have you abandoned ship?
No, I'm still on Twitter. I'm just taking the last week of the year off. sort of cleanse my mind, I guess you can say, and sort of um, yeah, just take a break, which is always good. I haven't, because of the newsletter and because how like Twitter is really helpful for like growing the newsletter. I've found it hard to actually find some time to take off, except for maybe like a day a week. Um, and so I figured Christmas Eve to New Year's Day, not gonna miss a whole lot. Except for things that will make me angry. Um, but I am hoping to use Twitter a lot less and social media in general. Uh, s- Going into the new year, I mean, I tell myself that every year, but I think it's really reached a breaking point this year with like Musk, taking over Twitter, and just like sabotaging it. Um, and I've also been reading this book by Max Fisher, entitled, uh, and by listen, and by reading I mean listening. I've I got a free year subscription to Audible, so I've been listening to books a bit now. Um, but anyways, the book is called The Chaos Machine: The Inside Story of How Social Media Rewired Our Minds and Our World.
Oh no.
Um, yeah,
In a
it's
bad
quite
way, I'm
good.
assuming. That's why you're failing.
Yeah, and I mean I mean Max Fisher is like a New York Times reporter, so like it's pretty like lib-brained, like, oh, social media is polarizing people on the left and the right, and then the only examples he provides of people actually taking action based on this polarization is from like the extreme right. So I mean that kind of
Hence the
undermines.
convoy.
Right, yeah, the convoy. I mean, he talks about like atrocities in Myanmar and Sri Lanka, and sort of the rise of the far right in Germany. The like reinvigoration of it has been greatly aided by social media. The only thing he can point to on the left is that like Jean-Luc Mélenchon in France's posts do really well. But I mean, otherwise, I mean, there's a lot of great information in that book, and I do highly recommend it. It's just its framing is kind of funny at sometimes, but it's very typical of what you would expect from like a New York Times reporter.
That's a
Um,
good point, though, that we have a large presence on social media. When I say we, I mean the left, but it hasn't quite generated the level of mobilization you're talking about, locally or internationally. So one could definitely argue that it's thwarting efforts. But how are you going to promo all of your content without social media? Just set up some automated tweets
well, one thing last year I went a month without social media in November, and
on
I really
purpose.
struggled with like growing my newsletter. Um, But now Substack has an option of like automatically, or maybe it did have this option, but I wasn't aware of it, of automatically like tweeting out your story. So I think that'll help me reduce social media intake. Though, I mean, I do find like engagement is best when I like write a thread, kind of just summarizing what the piece says, and then each tweet links back to the story.
So,
But yeah, I don't know. I'll see how that goes. But mainly, I'm working on a book, and so a lot of the people I am reaching out to sort of speak on background for it. Um, I I only am connected to them like through Twitter, so I kind of need to. It's really the DMs that keep me there, like the group chats I'm in and all that stuff. But
that's how I
yeah, I
found
don't
you.
know. I don't want to hijack the conversation here, but since I am here with a published author, I was wondering what tips you have, Matt, for writing books.
I know Jay and
Unmuted.
Santiago are listening because they both got great book ideas. So
Oh,
listen in,
well,
folks. And so,
I'm looking forward to hearing some good ideas. About the next project. Um, Hmm. What advice would I give for writing a book? I mean, I guess it's just persistence and passion, really. It's really what I can what I can really advise. Um, you just got to get deep into got to get deep into the story and be really and and be persistent. It's just it's how that's how it's done, and obviously a little life experience in the area you're writing about can help as well.
But like in terms of like what I'm having trouble with is like organizing my research and like,
Oh,
you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Good question.
You
It's
two,
Like
hard.
you
It's hard.
two, you two got to meet up and
Yeah, I think we gotta
swap
have a
some notes.
we should talk off.
yeah, we should. I'm sorry for hijacking your story.
No.
No,
It's all
it's
good. We might have some authors in the crowd that are eager, but I'm
I'm
like
happy to
dying
have
to go to
a talk about
Tiggerly.
Yeah, if you're
what are you
watching
writing
in
about, by the way?
uh so I am writing a book on Jason Kenney's sort of malign influence on Canadian politics and sort of how he was able to help shape it in his 30
Yeah.
years as so it's like a political biography and
Oh
there are
wow,
no books on Jason
Like a
Kenney.
damning
that's
political
true. There's
biography,
nothing. There's
right?
No,
Like
nothing.
this
there's
isn't
one coming out. There's one
There's
coming
a
out
definitely.
in
fan
a
book.
month called Blue Storm, and it's like a collection of like essays by academics like Keith.
Yeah.
I don't know about Keith Brownsy, but like Dwayne Bratt is like the big is I think the editor of it, and there are essays from a bunch of like Alberta-based academics like
Mm.
Melanie Thomas and Lisa Young and maybe Keith Brownsy, I think. But that's not. It's not like it will be good. I'm gonna read the shit out of it, and I'm sure there will be a lot in there to sort of take from. But um, it's not like it's like an academic work and like a collection. It's not like a cohesive narrative.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then.
But other than that, there are literally no books about Jason Kenney. And so what I've been doing is going to the Edmonton Public Library
Yeah.
and um, taking every book about Stephen Harper and just going through the index and
Yeah.
seeing what it says about Jason Kenney. But even then, not a whole lot. Not a whole
Yeah.
lot of stuff. A lot of it's like, yeah, I already knew this. Yeah, he was uh, very keen on outreach to conservative elements in like immigrant communities, right? Like everyone knows that, or I don't know if everyone knows that, but I knew that. Um, and in Paul Wells's book on Harper, he actually spoke to him. I think there's one quote in there from Jason Kenney in the entire book, but because I don't plan to talk to him for it. I gotta try.
Yeah.
I don't even
Don't
know
you
how
already
I do
have the
that.
cover art, Jeremy?
No, that is.
Don't you have a photo with Jason Kenney?
Oh yeah, no, that's not gonna be on the cover. That'll be in there. That'll be like in
Or
the
at least
middle.
it's the author photo at the
Recently-
back.
recently- Who's the publisher?
Dundern.
Oh,
Oh,
great. Yeah.
we've
no,
got a
Scott's
publisher,
Really,
that's good.
That's really good. No, Scott. Fraser
Before
there.
we
Oh,
get,
you know Kwame.
Yeah. Yeah. Kwame. Yeah.
before
sorry.
we get to
Hold on, I think
into the
Jay's got a
No,
comment.
publisher
not that well.
side of
Anyway,
stuff.
not well. That's,
So
yeah.
before we move on to Tiggerly, Jeremy, you talked about social media and its ineffectiveness to actually lead to action, and it started a conversation with another author of Poetry for Trees on YouTube who's watching. Lace is a Verb is their YouTube name, and they're talking about podcasts and magazines are great, but I think they should host public forums, civic debates, or something. And it's interesting because we've hosted, Jessa and I and many others hosted so many events where it was discussion, it was planning, it was action, it was this, it was everything you could think of. And then, nothing. So it was like 2 years of not transitioning from not just social media, but like big Zoom meetings, big, massive Twitter spaces that went hours and hours. So it started a bit of a conversation where Does is it because of social media, or is it a lot of people on the left are advocates, not activists?
Let's let Tigra like answer that as well. This please, please. Tigra's been trying to chime in for 40 minutes. We've got her mic working. I cannot make this woman wait any longer. Well, all three of you can answer that question, but I just can't bear to make her wait any longer. Tigra, you
Is it
do a lot on
working?
social media. Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for your
Yay.
tenacity,
Hey,
logging
y'all.
on and off. Kudos. So yeah, I don't know if you caught that question about social media. You use social media a lot to organize.
Hmm.
Um,
I didn't catch the entire question. So can he re-say it?
like, is it an effective
Mm,
method to change? You know, like Jeremy's talking about taking time off of social media. It's kind of like maybe a bit of wasted energy. Kind of like,
yeah, I also feel the same way as you, Jeremy, that I feel like I do need a social media break, but I have so many things tied to my social media that it feels almost impossible right now. Um, do I think I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with social media, just because of the negativity that happens on there. It's really not great for our mental health. And it just has created this super toxic virtual world where we communicate with each other in a way that I hope that we wouldn't do face to face, like in real life. On the other hand, um, like the Ahmed Aubrey case, for example, like would that have gotten as much traction as it did without social media? Because it wasn't until people took to social media and really blew that case wide open that the government decided to do anything about that. Like they were essentially trying to sweep that right under the rug. So I don't know. I am on the fence um, on social media, to be honest. But however, that's how I mainly do my marketing and plan events and get everything out there. And it's, you know, right now it's kind of hard, which sounds silly, to think about how I would even do that without social media. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a like integral part of our world and just how we communicate with each other that like for all its flaws, you need to have some presence on there. It's just I find that I spend way too much time like just arguing with assholes
Yeah,
and
for
not
sure.
actually time
oh
that could
no,
be
that means
spent
we all are.
writing and researching, and especially I mean my book deadline, I have 3 months to write this book. I've written one chapter of like a dozen, the time spent arguing with like pro-Israel people or whatever on Twitter, um, I could actually be doing stuff. But again, it is useful as a tool. It's just the problem is the way I see it is you can use social media, but it can easily slip into social media using you to like extract data and feed the algorithm.
Yeah.
And the problem is how easily you can slip between the two, right? Like I'm promoting my article, I'm and that's another thing. Arguing with people, I found in my experience, like a great way to gain visibility on Twitter is baiting people with more followers than you into an argument. Um, Matt Gurney is great for that. He always takes the bait, but it's
Now
just
your
so
secret's out.
like yeah. Um, Again, it's just such a like on the one hand it's a waste of time, but on the other hand, like when you're trying to grow a newsletter, it's a numbers game, right? You want as many people to see your work whether they like it or hate it, and that in order to do that you need there to be conflict, you need there to be drama. on social media to drive that engagement. And but at that point, you just become a slave to the algorithm.
I'm just gonna transition from that like wasted energy because Chica Lee was cutting in and out, and we were trying to ask her like, hey, you know, you did a lot of community work, a lot of activism and advocacy, mutual aid, a lot of building stuff from nothing, and you've transitioned of sorts, right, into electoral politics. And so, you know, just a disclaimer, you're amongst a few people, at least the team at Blueprints, we're really disgruntled with electoral politics right now. So we don't want to discourage you. We are still very excited when we see candidates like this show up. So, Tigra, like what happened? How did you decide to run as a candidate? Because you know, I'm gonna run folks. You said you weren't all that political, but you
I
must be.
still do not subscribe to either side.
All right.
I think the last conversation we had, Jessica was saying, "You're political. I don't think you know, but you are political." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not going to do it." And so I was approached. I was approached by a member of the Green Party, and I've been friends with him for a few years now, and he's seen me at my worst, seen me at my best, you know? So I was like, you know what? If I am being approached, he knows what my platform's about. He knows that I'm outspoken, I'm opinionated, and, you know, I will use my voice. So I'm like, that has to go for something, you know? They're not running in the opposite direction, which is usually what happens. And, but I do know that, you know, as Albertans, we do need a change. We need another option. There has to be another option that's being provided. And you know, the NDP was supposed to be that, and they have turned into this dumpster fire of I have no idea what's going on. And mainly what was happening in Wet'suwet'en and just the deafening silence that had happened because of that. And, you know, I was just like, F it. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't want to have any part of this at all. So I want to be that change. I want to be the other option, and not just me, but the communities in my riding, right? Like, I want to be able to bring the necessary people to the forefront, amplify the right voices, put people in places that they probably would not be able to get into. And that's the whole reason we need a change. We need a change. And I am trying to, it's really hard when you get into politics because the bureaucracy is uninviting, and um, you want to get in to create change, but at the same time, you have to succumb to these like principles and policies and to get your foot in the door. And then you end up saying, okay, I'm just going to do this one thing so that I can continue. And it kind of starts this vicious cycle. And that's one thing that honestly I'm scared of. So I feel like I have a really good group as well that is willing to hold me accountable. And I think that's really important, is to be able to take constructive criticism and feedback from people that you do really value their opinions on. But yeah, that's the reason why I've decided to run in the campaign, is to, you know, really prove that we do need political reform, and that there are policies that the Green Party are trying to put in place that are truly beneficial for Albertans as a whole, and not to just keep us in one place and stagnant and not moving forward, which I feel is what's really happening right now. We have politicians that will fight tooth and nail to stay in office and to stay where they are, with zero disregard for the broken promises that they're putting forward. And I just feel like they don't care.
Santiago, you mentioned that you really enjoyed the episode with Tigra Lee and Des. How are you feeling about Tigra Lee as a candidate now? Like, could you only imagine that campaign?
Yeah, I mean, like I've definitely said my skepticism towards electoral politics, but if electoral politics is going to happen, it's people like Tigre who have to be running, right? And in the whole like conversation at the beginning about like political versus not political, right? Like I think that that's one of the problems that a lot of people have with electoral politics, right? People who go in and it's like, okay, this is, there's the pipeline that they follow of like running, school board trustee, municipal candidate, provincial candidate, federal candidate, like there's a whole people who make like that. That's their career out of it, right? But it's people who are actually putting in the work and activism beforehand, who are engaging, becoming members of the community. Those are the people that should be, representing their communities. That's something you don't get a lot of. And so like when I see people like Tigra run, I think that's amazing. And I mean it's a difficult thing too, to put yourself out there in that way. This it's in the public eye. So like full props, full kudos, because that's a difficult step, and I really hope it goes well. Um,
Thank you. I do as well. I'm terrified. I'm terrified, but really, really hoping, yeah, really, really hoping for change, I guess. And but I'm not political at all. So I am just really hoping that I can create a really good, solid team here that we can move forward as a collective and try and bypass this sense of individuality, which I really feel is driving this country into the ground.
Oh yeah, you'll get lots of head nods across here. Like the idea of communitarianism is so lacking, and it impacts us. The best of luck, Tigra. Honestly, when is the election for us Ontario-centric people who have maybe no idea of this very crucial election?
The Alberta election is in March, I believe,
It's
and
May, I think.
May. Okay, yeah. So sorry, May. We are just starting to ramp up right now in the new year, and yeah, so it'll be.
Tigra Lee, as a fellow Albertan, you're running for the Greens.
Yeah, I'm running for the Green Party and the writing.
Sorry, where?
Sorry, one second.
Vermil-
We're just gonna see if I can mute that. Okay, there we go. So sorry about that.
Vermilion, Lloydminster, and Wainwright.
Okay, so rural riding.
Yes, rural Alberta. Right now, our MLA is Garth Roswell, and he's from the UCP. Interesting guy, to say the least. And I'm pretty sure we have an Alberta Party candidate, an NDP candidate, and then I think Garth is running again.
Who's running for the NDs?
I can't remember this person's name. Rochelle starts with an R.
Probably some like neoliberal, like
Aren't they all?
oil
Yeah.
and gas management type.
Yeah, let's cut corporate taxes again, and let's try this, beat this dead horse over and over again, expecting change. Because that makes sense.
I don't think the NDP said they're going to cut corporate taxes again. I think they said they're not going to increase them, which is still shitty.
Can we not create jobs without giving corporations a handout, though?
I love the way you just posed that so perfectly.
I
Who knew we'd get an Alberta politics debate here? Uh, but that is awesome timing that the two of you came on. What is the Green Party standing in Alberta? You know, is it, do they have any seats? Are they?
I think we have 3 right now. And for the most part, we're just trailing the Alberta Party, which isn't too bad. I knew getting into the Green Party, first of all, they went through the amount of racism that they were experiencing in their leadership. So I understand that the Green Party has its faults, and but their policies and their values align with mine. And even if I don't win, which, you know, I'm not even running to win, it's to just prove and show that there are alternatives that are not liberal, not NDP, and not UCP.
Before we move on to anything else, can I ask? We were gonna focus on like top tens and stuff like that. And for the Alberta folks, what is the number one most absurd political thing for you out in Alberta in the last year?
Oh my gosh. The
One,
Sovereignty
just one.
Act.
Well, let them think about it because I'd like to go to Tim if possible. And I do see you. Tim's got a limited time only here because it's his birthday. So happy birthday, Tim. If you haven't wished him a happy birthday already. And if you don't know who Tim Ellis is, then you need to listen to our episode, Open Source Organizing, where he talks about the importance of sharing knowledge in the movement, building up the skill sets of the progressives so we can get a lot more done with the people that we have. And I'm so glad you took time on your birthday. I know you've got a big party brewing. Of course you do. Because, I mean, Tim's also a DJ if you didn't know. So, Tim, welcome. How you doing today? Let me make you big
Thanks.
screen.
Oh, sure. Thanks. Yeah, I'm good. How are you? You can hear me, I hope. I haven't used this app before. It's working? Great.
We can hear you.
Perfect. Yeah, it's good. I'm excited about turning older. At least the process of partying, anyway, I'm excited about. So looking forward to that. And glad to be here. Thanks for organizing this.
Thank you. I wanted to, I missed the Grassroots Grotto. I was super excited about it, but my kid had his first Christmas rehearsal or recital, could not miss that. And so I did miss the Progress Champions Grassroots Grotto because you guys are doing a lot of work bringing folks together, you know, that might have different projects on the go, but they're all progressives. How did that event go for you?
It was fun. Jay was there. We had a good time. Yeah, it was nice. It was a trial run. We hadn't done something quite like that before, but I enjoyed it. We'll definitely do more of them in the next year. Just a chance for people to connect, talk about what they're working on, share their wisdom with each other about different things, different suggestions, ideas. It was fun, very casual. Got to have those spaces, I think.
Definitely. They don't all have to be work, right? You must know that. You're off to play in a second.
Yeah, well, the play is the work in a lot of ways. You know, it's the purpose of all of it, for me at least, is everyone should be given the opportunity to have a lot of joy in their life. And I'm very fortunate to have a lot of those opportunities, and I try and share them with others. But I think the don't lose sight of that purpose, you know. And organizing is fun, and politics can be fun. Doesn't have to be a drag. Doesn't have to suck the way they make it suck. So you know, find the fun in it and create the fun where you have to.
I think of Jay there because sometimes Jay's like, he forgets the social aspect. Jay is always wanting to work, right? You can laugh all you want there, Jay, but it's true. He's like, why are we doing this?
Put the
Are
social
we
back in
going to come out here and
socialism.
riot from this? Like, yeah, like what is the point? And so we need a balance between Tim and Jay there in terms of fun level. Do you have anything coming up for Progress Champions? Like I was telling someone about the training sessions, because a lot of folks don't, it's hard to keep up with the online tools that are available and really maximize these small teams that a lot of us have into doing really big jobs. So you got anything coming up for Progress Champions that folks should get excited about?
Yeah, we are going to be doing some trainings on Mastodon, because people are checking that out now with the
Thank
looming
you.
collapse of Twitter. Yeah, so that's fun, and I think Mastodon really speaks to our values as a movement. So I think it's really great that it's taking off the way it is, and I want to facilitate that. There is going to be a training on that one was a popular one. People are always asking about automation tricks and techniques, so we're going to do more on those. And then I'm going to be doing a survey and inviting people to tell me what they want to learn more about. So hopefully we'll have some of that going around too. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I'm excited about that. And then I think we're going to be doing a how do I phrase this? There's an initiative I'm working on for disinformation countermeasures and creating accurate, left-leaning information distribution channels and content. And so we're going to be doing some project crowdsourcing on that. I'm excited about doing that and sharing that with everyone.
I'm looking forward to it. I hope folks have signed up for it. So that's Progress Champions, right? You can find them on Twitter. Where else, Tim? They've got a website, progresschampions.ca. And yeah, it's for progressives specifically, you know, to share, to get more tools under their belts. Lord knows I could use a few, especially Mastodon. I went over there and just failed miserably. So it's just like my feed, I haven't found everybody yet, or everybody's not there yet. Maybe I'm on the wrong server. I don't know. A few people have tried to help me already. So please help me, Tim.
We'll give you the 101. There's actually a great tool now. It's called Move-to-Don, and it will just find everyone on your Twitter mutuals list who has a Mastodon account listed and automatically allow you to follow them all. So really handy.
That's amazing.
It's really nice. Yeah, we're not really on Twitter much more. I hardly use it at all anymore. I just find Mastodon to be it. We're so used to the algorithm, and not having the algorithm does present a different experience, but that is a better and certainly more progressive experience where you're not creating drama for engagement, like we were talking about earlier. I recognize the value of that when you're promoting things, but there's different ways, and I find them to be more wholesome and more enduring ways of building connections on Mastodon. And I like
I hear
that.
the engagement's better too, right? That there's a higher engagement on it than you get on Twitter, and I mean, everyone I think knows the Twitter engagement kind of sucks, but
Well, Twitter engagement, I mean, you can get a lot of engagement on Twitter. It's just a question of, you know, figuring out, you know, what sort of, I can't figuring out sort of like what you know, like any social media network, certain types of posts, usually more inflammatory ones, get more engagement than others. I found Mastodon to be unusable. I have an account up there, but I haven't posted once, and I don't even remember my password.
Well, I'm
And I
following
want,
you.
yeah, and I don't expect me to post anything because I don't even remember my password. And I found out you have to create a new account to change your server, and I don't know. It's just not. It's just so unfriendly towards users. I find I did sign up for an account on Post.news, which I found better than Mastodon. Like sort of everyone's in the same space. You don't have to sign up to um, the right server or any of that. You know, sort of everyone's there. How long can your post be on Mastodon? Is there a character limit?
It's 500 characters, and then you actually don't. Your server doesn't really matter in terms of where, like, who you can follow. You can, like, it's federated, it's connected, but it's not as intuitive for sure. You can tell it's built by like tech people who are like free software people, but it is getting better, and I think certainly the principle of it is because it is not for profit. It's very much like espousing our values. It's collective. It's not for profit. It's not going to be bought out by a billionaire. They're not going to change arbitrary rules, and so there's a lot of value to that. But you're right. I'm not here to evangelize for any particular platform. People should use what works for them, and there's different things that you could achieve on different networks and different platforms. I do like it gives me a similar experience to Twitter in the way that I liked to use Twitter when I was using it for myself. It is not what I would use for like promotional Twitter, the way I use Twitter when I was promoting a cause, because it's a different you don't have the algorithm, so you're not getting visibility the same way. You're building more enduring, but more direct relationships.
That's that's disappointing to hear. I had mastered Twitter. I feel like, and now having to learn all these new platforms. But again, we've got another two guests just to welcome. I don't want them feeling like they they haven't been introduced yet. So Anna Jessup's joined the studio as well. Anna was on an episode we called "Holding Space." You'll find Anna every Thursday down at Toronto Police Headquarters. We'll let her kind of chime in, but yeah, it was about a discussion on allyship and what it means to hold space for marginalized voices and to be a good ally. We talked a lot about consistency too, on how that helped people find you and make connections, and the need to build networks, particularly across the city of Toronto, to get some of the good work done. Anna's part of a group called, and this says a lot about what Anna does, I suppose, is fund our communities and defund the police, right? Welcome, Anna. Is your mic working? No. Don't say that. Well, Tigran knows what that feels like.
Is it working?
Oh, yay. There you go. We can hear you now.
Yeah, thanks for pulling this together, Jessa, and getting us all together. I was, I'm really see these folks because, I follow the work of the people who are here, and so it's nice to. Yeah, so it's just meant to be a space that is consistently there, whatever else is going on. We're set up to provide a platform for people with a message that needs to be protected, and so it's meant to be a platform for with the objective of amplifying their very oppressed people still must confront the police. So if having this space, knowing that every week, if you want to meet people who we're socialist and anti-colonial, Thursday at 5 o'clock you can meet people with that set of values, and the mic. We have open mic. Speakers are in inverse order to intersectional privilege. So racialized women speak first, and there's music. So, yeah.
Again, working kind of fun into the activism and the organizing that folks need to do. I loved how you described the spaces that you held, and the inverse order of the mic. We were always trying to find creative ways to make sure that the spaces that we create allow for that equal voice, because quite often it's the same voices coming to the forefront over and over again, and it's hard to kind of work those structures into our organizing effectively. Were you there this evening? Like, today is Thursday. I'm kind of all turned around with the holiday.
Yeah, we have some legal observers who really who just do outstanding work, and who have just been there consistently, since we started a little over a year ago. Like a year and a half ago. And it was kind of nice to see people showing an interest again. I'll just put it out there, like, one thing we're looking for, if other people want to take it on, if you're interested in taking a leadership role in this, or people who have the right analysis, an intersectional socialist analysis, who you would like to see centered in something like this, we'll make a banner for them. So a few other things that we do, if there's distribute flyers for it, if it's central to the values that we want to platform. Someone's calling me. I'll call you back later, Catherine.
Okay.
And it's my sister. so it, and also just providing people power behind stuff. So if there's like an event coming up and you just need someone to make you a banner, you know what I mean? Like just like grunt work. Then then you can send it that way. It's like, hey, we really need a banner for this event. Can you help? Then we'll do what we can to get it done for you so that you just got it. But if you know some people who you think who you'd like to see, like the face of that work, then let me know, because we can get a banner made for them, and yeah, so bring as much leadership as possible. So just keep that in mind. If it's something someone would like to take on a role with, let me know.
So I find it interesting how this went from Jeremy talking about taking a break from social media to you, who is constantly on schedule, out on the streets. Actually, you do utilize both Twitter and Live and being out there. So
Yeah.
have you found that it's harder to get people from watching on Facebook Live to being out there, or are you seeing a lot of people coming out and it's growing, ebb and flow?
I mean, like, they closed down the street for a really long time. The police had, like, the street was just closed. Like, we lost a lot of folks when they were doing construction on College Street. And now, like, we're actually seeing passersby going, oh, hey, you guys are back. We're like, yeah, we're still here, right? And, but the fact is that a lot of the people who are most impacted by the police, you're going to meet on the street, right? Or they may not have internet access. And I think, and a lot of the people who, when we were really getting like, regular turnout, people who would come and who would get the microphone were people who'd been evicted from Lamport Stadium, people who'd been evicted, Lamport Stadium Park, people who were homeless, people who were living in tents, and these, who, on a really daily basis experience violence from the police. And so I think there has to be a balance. To Tim talk about Mastodon, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm interested in open source, software. At the same time, when it comes to struggle, like real actual struggle, right? It's very important to see people in person, because you need to have an analysis and the intellectual awareness, and all that stuff that we do together when we study together. But you also have to know each other and trust each other and know what each other's limitations are, so that you can put up physical resistance. And that requires personal relationships. There's nothing to replace being in the same physical space with each other. And those two things together are very powerful.
Thank you for taking the time to give that insight, because normally people will pick one thing that works for them, and you're kind of in between. But I think it's unfortunate that Tim had left, but I think it's also knowing that your goal. He had talked about how he will not use Twitter or Mastodon for promoting. He'll use Twitter for promoting. And Jess had talked about mastering Twitter before. You kind of stay stuck in circles when you use a single source of social media. And like you said, there's so many people who won't find you on Facebook Live. Most of the people who walk by you on the street, they'll probably never find you on Facebook and randomly and follow that. So I think it's really good at the end of the year to kind of have everyone review how they actually use and optimize social media for what they're doing. And then I think that I believe Skylar isn't alone, but I'll throw to Jessa to introduce Skylar.
Well, I see that they put Skylar and Layla. I don't know if you folks are there. If you remember, and I hope you do, our episode called Land Back, we were privileged enough to interview two land defenders, Skylar Williams and Layla Stats, both Mohawks from 1492 Land Back Lane. They that was a really compelling episode. Santiago, in particular, we went a lot back and forth on the impacts that had. We'll talk about it a little bit while we're waiting for them to maybe come on camera or turn their mic on there if you can hear us.
Yeah,
Um,
they put a message in the chat. They're just putting the baby down. ETA 7:30.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. I did know it would be a spontaneous if anyone's ever had a newborn. There is no scheduling around that. So, yeah, surprise, that was one of their updates since the last time they were on. But we'll let them kind of talk about how life is treating them when they get on. But good, thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure we acknowledged them and they were just waiting around. Um, yeah, so to Matt, I'm going to go back to Matt, Jeremy, and Tigra Lee just for a second, just to make sure you guys can chime in because we kind of strayed from you for a little bit. But anybody want to just make some really brief predictions for 2023 in terms of specifically Canadian politics? What will be any big moves or you know, I'm gonna put I'll put Matt on the spot first. You know,
And I don't know, 2020 differently than I thought it would. So I'm hesitant to get into the. And I know I'm get into the hesitant protect business, but I will say I do think I'll just say I do think for all their faults. Should I make a prediction because I could be wrong. Should I say
do
something?
it, Matt.
Okay, I do think the NDP will win the next election in Alberta. I do think they will. Even
Tigra
with
Lee's
all
not
the
happy with your prediction.
They'd have to fuck up really bad.
yeah, it's that bad. Like
it's like it's like a Biden thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like no one's gonna be
Yeah.
excited to vote for them,
yeah.
but they'll do it to get rid of Smith, who is outside for base extraordinarily unpopular.
Yeah, it is beyond like it really is that situation where it's that one time where it really is true. Yep, the other people are so bad you can just sort of stumble in. I think that might work, but of course that means that the left obviously needs to be doing its own independent organizing and strategizing at this point in Alberta because it's not a it's not really Alberta NDP is not really a force of the left anymore. So if it ever was,
If it ever was good. Well, see, I've heard folks saying either way, but I'm glad that you guys kind of seem to agree that Danielle Smith will, spell the end, maybe not the end, but a bit of a downfall for conservatives in that province. Because I know, like, when we were talking to Tigra Lee and Des, we thought it was quite the endeavor trying to organize progressively in that province because even your most leftist party is not really that, but I mean a lot of us in provinces can say the same about dealing with the NDP. Tigra, that's a long election. Like you said, March, is that what
May.
told?
May.
You declared so early. Are you in campaign mode? Are you like kissing babies already?
Not yet.
Well, COVID,
But yeah, we are in campaign mode right now. I'm still collecting signatures to get my name on the ballot. And that's such an interesting question to, kind of it's like a guessing game, like what's going to happen in 2023. I feel like we were, I don't know, kind of blindsided in 2022. If Jason Kenney doesn't align with Danielle Smith, I think that really says a lot about her in general. And I don't even know. It's just like one thing after the other, and I'm trying my best to stay positive. I mean, can we just go up from here? Like, is now the time that we can do that? Do we have to continue to do these same things over and over again? I don't have an answer for that question, but Yes.
Anybody have any resolutions? I mean, I don't do those anymore. I don't know why we use the calendar year to kind of improve ourselves, but um, anybody want to go on record as we can help you hold to it? Santiago, what are you going to do more of in 2023?
Oh God, I have no idea.
Editing.
Editing. I mean, the only like I won't put like a resolution. I'll put more of like a general objective, which is to find a way to do everything that I want to do without burning out and find balance, because that's been the goal for a while, and doing entirely too much of something, and that'll lead into a whole conversation with Jay at some point about burnout, because that's the eternal struggle, right? So that's my New Year's resolution: minimize burnout, if anything.
Jay, we've alluded to it twice now, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks here who I can definitely relate, possibly provide content. Um, do you want to explain what we keep referring to when we say burnout?
One of the things I've really learned a lot about, because I saw it in everyone else and refused to recognize it in myself, is burnout, and how everybody has a different understanding, or maybe they don't even, and they've just been stuck in burnout and think it's normal. So I'm going to be bugging everyone who's on here over the next little bit to talk about burnout, how you keep going, the effects, and it's going to be an interesting series. I've got lined up quite a few psychologists and that to talk about what's actually going on the inside of us, and maybe help us learn how to, I don't want to say deal with it, but maybe actually take a break, that because everyone that I know who hits burnout, there's no active way to deal with it. So it's just going to be talking about how it affects what they're doing, how it prevents them or influences them. My burnout actually motivated me, but that's a spiral that I didn't understand I was going down. So just lots of things about focusing on the intersectionality and how it affects individuals, so that we can start normalizing burnout and normalizing it being okay to talk about and to admit, and so on. So with that, we'll go to people who most likely have quite a bit of burnout from how long they've been fighting.
Jay's talking about you, Layla and Skylar there. You folks get up to a lot. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I know you are two very busy individuals, even more so now, like how you folks had time. And so, why don't you update our audience? Because they absolutely loved your episode. I'm not sure if you heard us talk about the impact that it had on us. Um, just listening to the way you describe the land as family and your drive to do what you folks do. And a lot has happened in your lives since we spoke. So, how are you guys?
Hello, everybody. We are tired.
A little tired, running off low sleep. We've got a 2-week-old little Billy, and just amazing though. It's such a like life changer to bring a new life into the world, and then have this responsibility to make
His connection to the land,
to the water, that he knows why.
do what they do. And yeah, so it's been,
But it's been awesome. It's been amazing.
Yeah, no, I tell you, waking up all through the night and hearing him cry, and like even just those little whimpers of him is something for me that's just one of the most amazing things in the world for me.
That's so lovely to hear. But I guess, yeah, one of those questions will be how come mom and dad are always in trouble with the law, right? And we know that's not any fault of your own, but the colonial system we're living under. But, you know, you're not your average
I mean, this is the
parents
story.
in that regard, right? There's a lot of,
This
yeah, there's
sorry,
a lot of kind
story
of,
of lots of indigenous people. Like this isn't just this isn't just us as activists. This is across the board. Why is mommy and daddy always in trouble
yeah,
with the law? Just the way that it is,
that,
and you know it is. You know, we try and make tips at to tear down whenever we have a chance. So.
thank you for reminding us that, because I was referring to your interactions as land defenders, but thank you for that, because it doesn't take any actual infractions of the law for Indigenous folks to end up in prison. That we know that, and the disproportionate incarceration is just a continued colonialism. So I do appreciate that clarification, Skylar. You guys had developments in your legal case. Do you want to talk about that, or should we just look forward to 2023?
Well, there's lots of developments on our home front and also, you know, across Turtle Island in our fight for the water in the Wet'suwet'en territory. And, you know, they're still going through trials. I did get an update from there
that the drilling has stopped
because of clay deposits. I guess there's some sort of clay around the river that's preventing them from drilling. So they have to bring in environmental, the baby's crying. They have to bring in environmental testing. And it was interesting. I was talking to my brother who's out there, and he was saying it's almost as if the river is protecting herself, like solidifying these clay deposits.
can't drill. But yeah, it's quite a
It's quite an interesting spot to be in. And, you know, a lot of people maybe have seen the news or seen, you know, that Skylar and I, we did plead to criminal contempt charges. One of the main reasons was, you know, just this baby and having so much here in our home front and having constantly.
but the thing that was really important
to us was that it was
Sorry, honey, baby's making an appearance.
it was acknowledged, you know, why we were there to the courts, and it was acknowledged why we chose to break the law. So acknowledging that we broke their laws, yes, but also making that statement that those laws are not what drive the Indigenous movement. You know, those
systems are designed against us.
and yeah, so it's still an ongoing fight out there. It's something that you know, it changes you when you drink that water. And it's interesting because it's been said that, you know, my social media platform or my activism is used to encourage others to break the law. But really, I just encourage you to go out the water, you know,
To go out there and
experience that electricity, that life inside the water that we often don't experience here because of all, you know, so much has been done to that water when we get it. But when you drink it from the source, when you drink it as Creator meant to, it changes you, and you have this fire that it's something worth protecting, especially for, you know, these but yeah, so that's still ongoing. There's still a need for support, for awareness, and I think the more that we can share the messages from out west, whether it's you know, the forestry and the old growth, you know, lumber that's happening. They just did a huge
we just did a huge journey from the West Coast
all the way to Montreal to make their statement of the old growth forests. And you know, it's like it's something that it shouldn't be you know, an Indigenous responsibility to be the voice. We have been, and we have stood in front of the police and the violence, and and
for the land and the water. But I feel like
that shift is happening, and the more that we can talk about it in spaces like this, the more that we can become aware, because once you know, you can't unknow. You can't ignore the fact that, you know, one of the purest water sources right now is under threat and being destroyed, and people don't know about it. So when it's people like you guys, you know, who maybe look more like your friends, or, you know, they don't just look like
crazy Indians, you know, people start to pay attention.
people start to perk up. So I encourage everyone, you know, whatever you can do, whether it's, you know, sharing a story or sharing an article or sharing your own perspective, your own opinions. I think that that's really important for us to form our own opinions and our own voices and speak out when things, you know, when we don't agree with things. And I think that
issues in our society is that we kind of bury our heads in the sand.
and we don't want to have an opinion. We don't want to ruffle feathers. We just want to survive, really. So yeah, when you take a stand and you have an opinion, you have a voice, you're speaking out that this is not right, that Indigenous, any land offenders, you know, that are standing up for the future of our planet should not be criminalized. You know, that's something that even our you know, they
It when it's a roar, you know. So I want to.
I'll bring Skylar back. I'll do the switcheroo here to give you guys some updates on what's going on at 1492 Landback. I think the only solution is right here. Harvey.
Off to Billy she goes. Skylar will join us. Santiago and Jay, I'm sure you both have questions for Skylar here, and I've been hogging the mic, so step right in, my friend.
I'm going to ask a question that's kind of a bit off topic but on topic, because it's going to be about activism and parenthood. Because I've involved my daughter in activism, but it's also changed how I go about it. And also, when she is done, I am done. So it's about learning how a different way of being active. How do you balance, I want to say, your time, but I know you don't get the option to really balance your time. But how do you balance how you go about activism in a way that doesn't put you, it's very different for you and Landback than me doing something focused on disability, where I'm not going to most likely have police show up or get violent. So how do you learn or relearn or adapt to, you kind of touched on it, but is it
Yeah, I
something
mean,
you consciously do?
yes, absolutely. And I mean, we like me and Layla are very fortunate that we have, a lot of good, like, good. They are absolutely amazing. Our family, who is like, you know, uh, my parents, have, born and raised here in Six Nations, and and raised me here, and it's one of those things that's just like they understand and know what it is, what the fight's about, and their generation did it, and the generation before them, and the generation and so like for most Mohawks, we've been fighting for land back since contact, so it's just kind of the way it is. So um uh, but yeah, it's just really being able to pull on those supports and family and friends that like but in terms of going to marches and rallies and that kind of stuff, like that kind of stuff is, the kids are always there, like they always got a flag in their hand, and you know right at the front leading the chants and all that good stuff, and they're right into it. But they also like going into land back, like I have, teenage and one adult child, and having that conversation with them before going, and being like, there's a chance daddy could get hurt, and daddy could get hurt real bad, and I just need you guys to know and understand that I love you guys, and I like there's nothing I would do to put you guys in jeopardy, but this is something that we have to do, and I hope that you don't ever have to do, but you might have to, and but they've heard that, kind of growing up, like from when they were born, that this is just kind of the way, and so yeah, they've seen me go off, whether it's a Standing Rock or Tyndonega or Wet'suwet'en, or here in Six Nations on several occasions, and so they've kind of grew up kind of seeing that stuff, that it's kind of for them, I guess, and so oh shit, that's going away, and so it's just kind of the way it is.
That's hard to hear, I think. I can see it in Santiago's face. And I'm feeling that. And Layla said something I kind of wanted, I didn't want to challenge her on it, but it was like, just share articles and do that. And I feel like there's a whole lot that settlers need to do beyond that now. When you're telling stories of how you are preparing your children for your interactions and then their future interactions with police and the systems, that seems incredibly unfair, that all that, and we said this in the episode like multiple times, the land back episode, that heavy lifting has fallen on Indigenous people. You said they're from time of contact. Generations have kind of been poised to fight for something that's so basic, right? That's not like, you know what I mean? That's just like, you shouldn't have to fight for. And that's hard to hear as a settler, I think, but and don't feel bad about it, okay? We have to hear this. We have to hear that, because I think that's a real wake up moment for folks. The level of sacrifice that's many Indigenous people are doing right now to protect everyone's water. I don't know, Santiago. This is part of the reason, I think, why that episode hit us. I mean, we followed up with an episode on abolishing the monarchy, but that seemed really trivial. But it was kind of like a fight back against the crown of it, and the idea of them owning all that land as well. But how's that feel when you hear Skylar talk about that kind of mindset that's needed? And
I mean, it reminds me a lot of we were having with Alex the other day, when we were talking about, because all of this reminds me of a lot of, the struggles in Latin America, where, people, the decision of whether or not to have to get involved is no longer a decision. It becomes a necessity out of an existential threat, out of survival, right? And that's something that I feel like in Canada, that they don't necessarily recognize that. They don't feel that. They don't see how important this is. They don't, and so it's frustrating that you have to do that. That there's not more support. That people are not going out in mass, and people should be up in arms. People should be furious about this, and this is one of those situations where, like, I don't have an answer, and I don't know where to take things. I just have frustrations.
Well, let me chime in, and I'll see if I can lead us somewhere here with just a bit of an update with what's going on here in Six Nations. Just recently, the lower court, the Superior Court that granted the injunction almost 2.5 years ago now, just reheard the injunction case for a second time now, and with the second time giving the same result as the first. We had appealed this same decision about 2 years ago now, and this is when this Superior Court judge here in Cayuga, Ontario, barred me from participating in my own defense, and ruled against us without hearing anything from our side. And then we won the appeal. we won the appeal, and the injunction was overturned. And then the developer went back to the same court that gave him the same good decision that he got the first time, and they were successful in getting the injunction reinstated. And so right now it's kind of this sit and wait game, and wondering whether or not the police are going to come and raid the camp again, or whether or not people are going to get shot at and tasered and dragged from our lands once again. And it's just one of these. It's kind of a reoccurring theme with stuff, and so that's the fight right now. My criminal stuff is almost done here, though, for violating that injunction in the first place. And I've had almost all my charges have been dropped. I am going to be pleading, though, as part of that, to breaching the conditions of my release. And so I did do that. There isn't a whole lot of to defend that. Yeah, I said I wouldn't do a thing. I did do a thing, and like even those kind of decisions, like it's all about trying to figure out like how I can be most effective in whatever it is that I'm trying to do. And if I can't, go here or there, or see this person or that person, like I'm not organizing effectively, and I'm not to defend those lands in the best way possible. And so those are the centers of my kind of decision making around pleading to something. I mean, for me, it's I just want to fight everything. I don't care what it is. Like, you're gonna charge me or something, I'm gonna fight it tooth and nail. And but such is the way right now. And like, we do got the new baby, and so having life kind of in limbo it wasn't something that we were to tolerate. But maybe also it just kind of reaffirms and reignites that same fire. Like, I think this has been a lifelong struggle for me, this fight, and this the organizing around it. And I think one of the big kind of takeaways of this last few years of doing this organizing around Land Back Lane was just, I think, accepting where and like and trying to find that bridge. Like, I can't remember, somebody had told me something about uh, when every interaction that you have with people, they're either they fit on the scale of 1 to 5, and if they're a 5, they're not coming to your side. Like, you might be able to get them to the middle, but they're not going to be the person standing shoulder to shoulder with you. But you know what? Maybe they won't be the person standing across from you. And I think that our ability at Land Back Lane to be make space for those people to disagree with us or whatever, and make space to walk them through whatever crazy, because, like, nobody tears down the left like we do. Like, nobody tears down Indigenous communities like Indigenous communities do. It's just we are, and we're activists because we're not afraid to speak out. And when stuff is happening in our activist communities that we may not agree with, it turns into a great big fight because this is what we do. And so it's just trying to be patient in those moments when maybe somebody doesn't want to show up and hold a barricade line. Somebody doesn't feel like this is the right tactic, but having patience enough to be able to say, whatever it is, like, let's work together, let's find a way to, like, all right, if you don't agree with my tactics, like, what are your tactics? How do you feel like getting heard in this is going to happen? And you know what, it creates some middle ground, where people aren't trying to say, dictate to anybody how things should or shouldn't go. And I think that was kind of my biggest takeaway from that, what made, like, the social media stuff or mainstream media stuff, or even doing podcasts like this that like these are super important. Because you know what, I remember I did right in the middle of everything. There's roads were dug up and police were all around, and we're sitting there in the middle of the freezing cold, and there's 5 million things to do. And I did this podcast with this kid. He was like 17, and his parents, just awesome kid who just was like so into it. And I checked him out on YouTube. I think his last video he had 8 views. And and so I did this podcast with him, and somebody I was like, "What the fuck would you do that? Like, what? Like, you got way more important shit to do right now. Like, there's a whole bunch of shit going on, and you're doing a podcast with this 17-year-old kid." And that show, and it's, like, that's like those 8 viewers, like those people actually give a shit. They give a shit about what this kid's got to say. They give a shit about, and so you know what? I did this podcast with, huge places in mainstream media and all that kind of stuff. And you know what? You might have got one or two of those people to listen to you. But like those 8 people that viewed that kid's podcast, like that was gold for them, And so like that means something. And like just being able to make space for people is real huge.
Anna, I see you kind of nodding along because that's a lot of, you can relate there, right? I think between the need to make space, but also trying to come to terms with disagreements on tactics because, you do create networks down there. So can you relate to what Skylar's saying is trying to navigate that as best as possible? And just for the record, we are so appreciative when folks come on to our little podcast and don't pay too much attention to how big the audience is yet. So because I know you impacted, just even if it had been just Santiago and I listening to that episode, I think you made such an impact on just the two of us that is going to be exponential in terms of what we do and our impact and who we talk to from the lessons you gave us. That's happening every time you get on a mic, Skylar. And I can say that about a lot of the folks that are joining us today, but that impact was profound, friend. So to that 17-year-old kid, who knows where they are now, but I'm sure we all kind of appreciate you taking the time to teach us lessons that we should have learned already, but they were hidden from us purposefully. But because we know that's work, right? We try to do as much learning as we can on our own, but
he texted me about, I don't know, in the summer anyways, and this is probably 2 years after, and he texted me out of the blue one day and said the podcast we did got 200 views, and he was just pumped that he just thought it was
I love that.
Well, like, that's awesome. That's awesome. Like whatever. I'm like, I did the interview.
We're gonna bring that kid on our show.
Flipped over bus and the hole in the road and over bus and so it was pretty cool. So I was happy to be able to do that.
That's good. No entryism, right? Like just that's being as accessible as possible. Let me welcome. We've got Des here. Let Des kind of chime in and say hello for a second here, so we're not just ignoring her. Des, I want to thank you. Des became a patron of this show. We haven't mentioned the fact that our show is completely made possible by patrons to do our hosting fees and everything else that you kind of need for a podcast. So we greatly appreciate that, especially when we get a new one. We get uber excited. Thank you for joining us. And how are you?
Yeah. I'm good. I'm great. I actually, I saw the email that you had sent out about today's podcast, and it said thanks to our patrons at the bottom, and I was like, you know what? I better get on that list. Right now. Yeah, so I did join, and I became a patron today. But also, I just wanted to support the work that you're doing, Jessa, and platforming some incredible people. I'm feeling pretty good today. Today was a bit of a hectic day for me. My job is now regaled mostly to the back of the store that I'm working at. I sell firearms at the time. But today I was really grateful for that. Usually I'm frustrated I don't get to be on the sales floor because I love interacting with some of our customer base. But today it was great because our sewage line broke and the whole front of the store smelled like poop. So I had an interesting day.
Well, that stinks. LOL. No. I put it in the chat here for our guests, but if anyone has, oh, Skylar's just, so only one person thought it was funny. If anybody wants to ask questions in terms of like where, because I know Skylar is completely in tune with not just what's happening at 1492 Landback Lane, in what most folks would know as the Caledonia area, right? And because when you're allowed to go west, Skylar, you do, and Layla touched on this before she went off to Billy there, the Wet'suwet'en situation. So if folks have any questions here on what that type of organizing is like for Skylar, or each other, please feel free to chime in. Like, I'm full of questions, but I also want you guys the chance to interact and learn from each other. So, Des, I mean, you guys, how you feeling about Landback? You know, did you get a chance to listen to that episode?
I did. And I just got to say, I absolutely adore the work that you guys are doing. I'm a huge supporter of 1492 Landback Lane. And I would love to help and support you guys any way I can. So I may connect with you later to see if there's anything that I can do, whether that's financially or even just eyes on the ground in the prairies. Any kind of support you guys need, I'm all about that. I read, who isn't about land back at this point? I think if you're not about land back, you're in the wrong team at this point. We're seeing climate crisis really starting to ramp up. We're going to see it get worse. And Indigenous people, we are the first line defenders, the custodians of the land. And it's really important, the work that's being done there. I guess my question, other than what's the best way to support the action that you're doing, is what do you see in the next couple of months being the goal, and what do you see the need to attain that goal, and what are ways that we as people who are outside of that area or outside of the nation, outside of the land defenders, what can we do to make sure that comes to fruition, that those goals start to really get met, because time's ticking, right?
Yeah, and I think that uh, it's difficult to say, for folks, that are far away, absolutely, you know what, financial stuff is amazing, like the um, GoFundMe for our legal campaign, we were able to raise $500,000, which has given legal representation for everybody that was charged criminally, but as well, we were able to mount a defense for the civil case, which is the injunction. And so we were able to put a good fight on there, and we're appealing that right now to the Ontario Court of Appeal. And so we'll see what happens in the interim between here and there, because like at some point here, like we are going to be calling for boots on the ground, because like it is getting to the point where it's going to be there's going to be police action of some sort, and the only people that get hurt is our people on the ground, and so whatever we can do to whether that's education stuff, doing campaigning in your area to let people know that these fights are still going on, like that, like like everybody sees the flash in the pan when the roads are getting dug up and that kind of thing, but right now, like there's that, like full families living on the at the camp there, half a dozen children, like there's between a dozen and 15 people that live there full time, and plant gardens and trees and try to rehab the soil, like these are the things that are going on day to day, but it's just when you see those huge police interactions where SWAT teams are rolling in, and armored personnel carriers are rolling. It's kind of become standard for what it is that those police interactions look like, and so whatever we can do to amplify those voices, whatever we can do to make sure that we're doing everything, that we're calling every contact, and emailing and messaging and whatever, and to make sure whoever it is we know it, like, because like those flash in the pan moments, uh, we only get wins in those moments when people show up. And I think like that's the biggest thing that I can tell anybody that's wanting to dip their toe into activism is just show up, just get there. Get there. When you get there, find out, talk to some people, say, wait, like, this is who I am, this is where I'm from, you know, try not to come off like a cop and try not to come off like a cop.
Des had to prove she wasn't a cop before Tigra Lee would work with her.
Yeah, one of the first things that she asked me when we were first organizing was, yeah, so I'm not fond of police. And I'm like, oh, ACAB in this house, always ACAB. Like, yeah.
So she felt like she could trust you then, even though you were an NDPer, right? As long as you were okay with defunding the police. I wanted to ask Anna, because when Anna was on, she talked about Land Back Square. And, Skylar's talking about just being there. So in the city of Toronto, what do we got? Yonge and Dundas Square is renamed. Anna, I don't want to make any mistakes here. There's a bit of a solidarity movement. There's a solidarity movement within the city of Toronto. How is that going? Have you been to one of the actions? Does it ebb and flow? Like Skylar's talking about, like we have these flashpoints.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm not. Were you able to hear? Oh, sorry.
Mute button again.
Did I mute? Can you hear me?
No. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So like, I mean, I've been to Land Back Square before. I'm not one of the central organizers at all, right? Even when you and I were speaking, but I was a regular there. And so, I mean, there are a lot of folks there's a lot of Indigenous leadership there. And I think just like knowing that it's there, knowing that it's a thing, right? That it's, then, you can, people can sort of like reach out and do what they can to get in touch with the folks who are doing that. So I mean, like that's I think that there has to, speaking from a settler, right? Like I'm a white settler, so I'm not going to speak for Land Back Square, except to say that I mean, everyone really needs to support this movement. I mean, like if you want a world that's worth living in, and I mean, my thoughts right now are more in terms of the global relevance of Land Back, its relevance to the left, to the labor movement, and the importance of having stable organizations that are ongoing and ready at a moment's notice to put out messaging and solidarity with the work that Skylar is doing, to provide institutional cover immediately, to say, yes, we're in solidarity, to like build those connections in our unions, so that when people take those risks where they're stepping outside, and yes, you have to step outside the law. I'm glad to hear Skylar say, and they're telling me, not to do these things, but how can I be effective? How can I be effective if I don't organize? Well, and that's a labor. It's an attitude that our labor movement really, really needs right now, because that all of us really need.
Everyone's nodding.
Yes. You know what? Sorry, I didn't hear what you said. I didn't hear what Skylar said there.
Oh, I said I'm also union. Oh, look, I'm even sporting a 736 shirt on today. Yeah, and
I haven't been at Land Back Square for a while, Skylar. That's a question that's got to go to Skylar. I've seen you there, Skylar, and there was like really like amazing work going on there, and I can't speak for it.
Yeah, I mean, they are doing amazing work at Land Back Square, and you know what? Like they've done a huge of the heavy lifting for the what's open solidarity stuff. They did a huge amount, not Land Back Square did, but like a bunch of the organizers we're doing a bunch of the solidarity stuff with 1492 Land Back Lane, and you know what? They're just amazing to jump on. whenever they're called to action, and you know what, they've been absolutely amazing to help organize stuff. And the Anna touched on the labor movement stuff. And, there's a huge bunch of things that happen within the labor movement to support land back lane, to support Wet'suwet'en and stuff. Like it is huge. And I was trying to say, Anna, that yeah, I'm a union member. I'm a 736 iron worker, and I work mostly in Toronto, and it's I'm right at where am I at Bay and Front Street right now, putting up a high rise for a ridiculously stupid company or this bill. I think who knows what these things are anymore. And but yeah, and it's really amazing to see labor step up in the way that they have, and even that NDP, Matt Green here, and he's the NDPer from Hamilton Center federally, and he's been amazing to I've been able to draft letters to the Prime Minister and make sure they got, because like this is what that type of organizing, and being able to say, like, I don't care, if you want to support, you want to, I don't care what your tactics are, I don't care whatever you want to do to help this movement, to make sure these voices get heard, like whatever that takes for us to move forward in a way that's that is peaceful, of course, that is kind of honoring those bits of who we are, that, like, I don't care how you get it done, like, let's move forward, because like everybody gets really humbled into politicians are this way and labor people are that way, and the left is just going to eat itself anyway, and Indigenous people can't stop fighting with themselves, so why would we get involved in any of it? And you know what, for some of us, we don't give ourselves much of a choice. And Jay was talking about burnout earlier. I mean, when you're in the middle of it, that's all there is. And it unfortunately, land back lane, I don't know, a year and a half of just like living at that level of burnout, 1, 2, 3 hours a night of sleep, and you don't eat very much because you got too much coffee rolling through you, and it's just it's a great crap situation to be in, and burnout is one of those things where you just kind of learn to live at for a little while, and like, okay, next month's gonna be better. I promise next month's gonna be better. And then, okay, maybe next month's gonna be better.
I feel like so many people feel seen right now, I'm looking at Santiago, Des, everyone's like nodding, like, okay, so I'm not the only one that's clearly pushing through burnout at an unhealthy rate. And Santiago is just hopping off caffeine today for this live stream. So he was giggling over there. You should unmute yourself, Santiago. Because, I'm sure you
I've had
can relate.
dangerous amounts of caffeine today. It's been an all day. Oh, man.
Whatever works, friend, whatever works. But
Can I ask Skylar a question?
please.
Because a lot of what you're talking about I don't care how you support and so on. One of the most messed up things I ever experienced is last year I took part in the protests demanding an inquiry into the residential schools. Because I have autoimmune diseases and because it was my proper place, I was at the extreme back of this event. A reporter had to go through hundreds upon hundreds, if not over 1,000, Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit, the event organizers, everyone who should have been the focus, including a field of thousands of shoes to represent the child victims. And at the end of that, I got home and I told the reporter that my daughter and we are not Indigenous, Métis, or Inuit. And this is what they had done for the Ottawa Citizen, is they went to the absolute back, and I felt like absolute shit. I felt like I had betrayed my friends who I was there helping and supporting. And I learned about whitewashing, and I started pulling back because, if I take part they're gonna go through thousands of people who should be on the cover of that, like the cover image of that story, and pull out the white person in the back. So for others who are like me, who are scared about pulling focus, who for whatever, I don't want to specify, but for whatever reason they may have, to not want to, or to fear, or whatever, in supporting, what message would you have for those types of people? Not, I'm sorry to put such a big question to you, but you can make it right to me. I'm asking as Jay, someone who has spent so much time supporting as many people as I can, and I actually have second thoughts about supporting certain things now because they used me and my daughter, and I tried fighting for them to change that picture and remove that picture, and they didn't give a shit. It's media. So what kind of thoughts or advice or directions?
To be mainstream media. That's just the way that they are, and it doesn't matter what you do, say, whatever. These are the, you know, the pretty picture of the man and his daughter. Like that's the picture they're gonna take, and like it's just the way it is. And you know what, we, you know, do again, like we do, we kind of chip away at those things and make fun of them when they do, and you know, make sure that calling it out when those circumstances come, and when you know, you put this, you know, nice white people on the front of the people calling for an inquiry. I mean, I think it's pretty on its face, you know, how ridiculous that looks. And so it's one of those things that, like, at least for me anyways, and like for, again, like for everybody wherever they're at, like it's just, you got to show up. Because nobody shows up and nobody cares. And it's those moments of critical mass that we're able to put those bodies together. Because you know what, like it's a crapshoot to know what people are gonna show up for and what people aren't. And so, like, you know what, if it's raining, not too many people are coming. You know, if it's cold out, not too many people are coming. The left does really bad in the inclement, like real bad.
That's so bad.
And so we do what we can.
But Jay, I want to. Sorry, Skylar, but I wanted to remind Jay of something Layla said when she was on, that there is, and I know how Jay felt when he appeared on the cover. Like, he was so upset. We were trying to reassure him, like, you have no control over that, my friend. Like, you showed up and that's what happened. But, like, he really did. But Layla reminded us that, like, sometimes settlers need to hear from other settlers. It's like when women trying to talk about misogyny or black people try to point out racism, right? It's often really easily dismissed when it comes from that marginalized group because they're marginalized, right? Like, settlers have been taught not to listen to Indigenous folks. Like, racism is that way for a reason, right? Like, it means more when a man calls out another man for his misogyny. So it's like a toss-up. Like, you want the organizers to be recognized and to stop whitewashing everything that happens, right, and giving credit where credit's due, but also a need for us to see that it's not just Indigenous people demanding land back, or inquiries, or justice for murdered or missing Indigenous women, or clean drinking water. Like, all of this stuff is not just a small fraction of people demanding it, because I think, yeah, the action may not reflect it, but the personal political support for land back and all the other issues I mentioned, and ones that I'm obviously missing, it's there. It's just like, how do we collect it and point it in the right direction and make sure it's done in an equitable fashion, right? So that it's not just like another white feminist movement takeover that ends horribly. Yeah. So I'm just trying to, I guess, like, make Jay feel a little better too, and not to draw away from showing up because you're afraid that you'll look like you're co-opting it. That'll be seen in your actions with the people you're working with, right? Um, and being a good ally. I don't know.
And I think,
Anybody else want to chime in there?
I think just showing up like that and continuing to show up and being a steady face, whether it's at the back of the crowd or not, like just showing up is such a big thing. And you know, I need to commend you on that just for showing up because a lot of people don't because you know what, there's too much messy stuff. And you know what? Like we've had, you know, over and over and over again, like seeing how the mainstream media will twist whatever they can and use this picture or that picture or not listen to this voice, like, and you know what? Like even uh, a lot of like when people want to talk about land back stuff, like I'm always like, well, yeah, all right, but I got like there needs to be, you know, a female voice on with me, and like I think that's a really important thing for me to have that balance there because like it's just not it I, I don't know as us Mohawk men are kind of known to blow things out of proportion a little too often, and so you know that idea of balance for us is something that like you know is something you know certainly my mom instilled in me anyways, and you know we'll do our best to instill that in our kids.
I after all of that, like it took me a while to get okay with that whole situation, and a lot of people reached out to talk to me about it. I I've had a lot of conversations with others about how for me the white people in the back, the camera went straight. Normally it's attack dogs, assault rifles, police, and so on. That would never come to the back to get me. And that's a conversation that I found a lot of people who only get exposed to it through videos or through stories and stuff like that don't actually understand like the reality that goes on, especially for and throughout any land defender faces some of the most disgusting shit, and media tries their best not to show it. Like they showed in this example, they showed the white guy and the white daughter instead of the field of shoes, instead of the elders. Like there was like 30 or 40 elders who were front and center in all of this. But it has started to open up conversations for me where I can tell people like the realities that I've seen and that have been shared with me. I could still go to an event where there are people who you're going to get arrested, you're going to get beaten, some people die. But for me, I just have to worry about the camera coming. And it's such a messed up thing that I don't think people really understand. That is, I don't, I'm as blunt as possible. I don't do respectability politics. I don't bullshit. I like to focus on the reality because so much doesn't. But when it does come, like Jessa had pointed out, when it does come from Indigenous, Métis, or Inuit, what they're facing, it does get almost dismissed. But for me, I get to say I just have to worry about a camera. I don't have to worry about a gun, a dog, and so on. So it did mess me up for quite a while, but like you said, just showing up, listening. It's not just showing up for me, it's also listening. Because I could show up, I could go take part in that march or that rally, and then go home, and I would have not learned a lot of things. So it's listening, that show up and listen is what I would say.
You know, one of the things that I learned kind of early in organizing was around what's expected of me when I show up in a different community. And I think that was one of the things that like was drilled into me. It was like, you know, you're stepping into a community that's been through more trauma, more hurt, more division, more police interactions, more, over incarcerations in residential schools, like all of those kind of things, then, most people would ever even be able to fathom the level of trauma that this community's been in. And so when you show up with all your big ideas on how to do things and you need to do it this way or that way, shut your mouth and get to work. Whether that's cut and stack and wood, and clean, whether that's, and if nobody gives you any direction, well, go pick up the damn garbage bag and walk around and pick up the goddamn garbage. Because that's what it takes to be an ally. That's what it takes. Because like when I go to Wet'suwet'en territory, when I go to Tyendinaga, when I go to Standing Rock, that's what you say. These are the skills that I have. I can build stuff. I'm an excellent builder of things. I can put a nail in a board like nobody's business. And so if you want me to do that, I can do that. Here are some of the other skills that have come with, my life of doing activism. Do whatever you want me to do, and make sure you got some money in your pocket for bail, because you know what, the last people that you need to be going there and saying, hey, I got arrested fighting for you guys now. Now you people that have no money to do any of this other stuff need to get me out of trouble now. And when there is police interactions, don't be the loud one trying to get arrested or try to be quiet, be respectful, whether that's the police, the indigenous community that you're standing with, or the disabled community that you're standing with, or the labor community that you're standing with, whatever it is. Make sure that those voices that are there are the ones that are being heard, and say, you know what, like, that's not my union. That's that's OPSU. That's not my union. That's what we're here to support.
The one last thing I want to point out is it is amazing if you look at the organized. It's not just activism, it's community. Anywhere there's land defenders, there's actually, like, top to bottom, left to right. You talked about cooking and building and all of that. So just as like, if you need selfish motivation to go out and actually take part, you'll learn so much, not just about indigenous Métis and Métis Inuit issues, but how to actually sustain or organize it. Like, I'm failing to express it, how much you learn just from even a day. So there's more motivation, is learn how to better yourself as an organizer, as an ally, and so on, by taking part.
I'm just, oh, sorry. Hey, sorry
Go
to jump
ahead,
in.
Anna.
I'm just wondering, yeah, if I wanted to, or if people watching this wanted to stay up to date on the work that Skylar and Layla are doing, so that we can sort of take the message back to our organizations and get motions passed, get our motions to maybe donate money, to make public statements in solidarity. How do we get in touch?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, you can reach out to me or Layla. Like, both of us are on, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. Certainly reach out to us. 1492 Landback Lane has a Facebook and Instagram page. Wet'suwet'en, and I know they do some of the work that I've done in Toronto around people living without homes and Toronto and Hamilton areas. Actually, Anna, you'd probably know better of who to get involved with there. I mean, like, all of those kind of things are huge to at least find the spot where you think you fit. And like, because there's so many different kinds of, I don't know how to, like, types of communities around activism. There's the march and rally type people. There's the, and this is something that I've never been big about. I'm not much of a sign holder, I guess. I don't know. I like to be able to, make those stands on the land for our people in whatever way that can, and for other folks that means, going to, Ontario Federation of Labor, and has done a huge bit of help for Land Back Lane. Steel workers in Hamilton, and done lots of Toronto steel workers as well. Like, again, it's just about trying to make sure that we're working with everybody that wants to see something better. And you know what? Some people's tactics are different. Some people's are marchers and ralliers. Like, then right on. Like, let's do that. I'm in. Let's figure out how to make it happen. We'll do whatever we can. I know Layla and I, we do whatever we can to show up at everything we possibly. Because like we love you guys. Like we love everybody that puts their asses up there to help us to amplify the voices of people that are doing similar work. Like we love you guys, man. Like this is you guys are what make these movements possible. Like when we talk about critical mass, like it's because of shit like this. Like that you guys are taking the time to hear those indigenous voices. Like that's awesome for us.
Sorry, you like see me shaking my head because I find it so hard to take credit for simply like turning on a machine and like letting you speak into it when you compare it to the other things. But I know like you're making a really great point that, and we talk about that a lot. It's a diversification of tactics to get things done, right? There is no right way or wrong way, and the show tries to draw on as many kind of approaches as possible so that folks can feel like they can make an impact even if they can't do something very specific, like in terms of not everyone can get to the location that they need to do something in person, right? Not people have the financial capacity. So what can you do, right? So thanks for reminding us of that because that sits with us. Like I guess not. More people should, but not everybody has to physically stand between the river and the RCMP or the extraction companies. But there is a role, definitely. Or at least get Skylar some more bail money, so because that's got to add up.
It does after a while, yeah. Those costs do start to add up, and lawsuits and everything else. Like it's crazy, and so it's these developers with bottomless pockets like seem to be able to push their weight around in these courtrooms much better than us indigenous folks. They don't want to work around independently wealthy by any means to be able to have all of this kind of criminalization that has happened here. And you know what? And it's hard to even like put it into context because like like this is just what Indians go through every day. Like this is I mean, maybe mine's a little more public than everybody else's, but like indigenous people are like this is just the way it is right now. Six Nations, I don't know if anybody got the Amber Alert yesterday, or I think it was yesterday. The active shooter at Six Nations, and there was a officer involved shooting, and one cop had gotten shot and killed. And so there's just been like this massive scale PP presence all the way around the reserve. Like you can't leave your res, and for a lot of folks that carries a lot of trauma for them, right? And like, all the time, they watch their mom get beat up by the cops. Their brother got left out, nickel out, like, and so it's a hard thing to see stuff like that come with, I can't say that I shed a tear for the police officer, but I feel bad for his family, absolutely. But this indigenous kid that was in a stolen truck. He's gone through more trauma in his life at young man's life. He's a young kid, and he's gone through more trauma in his life. I know his family, and that kid's gone through more stuff than than even I would be able to stand in my life, And so it's one of those things it's hard. It's hard, and I think working with indigenous communities, with communities that are in different ways, like for people to be understanding of the fact that, like, I'm very fortunate. And when I talk about people, being addicts or alcoholics, I got no judgment whatsoever. I'm a recovering addict, alcoholic myself. I'm lucky. I've got a dozen years of sobriety underneath me, and that. But it's understanding that not everybody has had those opportunities to be able to heal from the things that they've gone through in their lives, and our communities are ones that have been traumatized to the nth degree. And so for people, like, we all get some understanding when they come to something that, not everything's going to be perfect all the time. Like, it's not going to be kumbaya by the fire all the time. And, especially when this stuff comes out. I'll tell a quick story. So this, again, in the middle of all the roads being dug up and stuff, this girl showed up and she'd been drinking, like a lot. Had been drinking a lot. And she walked up to the police line and started whipping empty beer bottles at the police cruisers. And I went running up and I said, "What in the world are you doing? Stop, get the heck back here." And, she yelled and screamed at me. And I'm like, "Please, you can't do that." And she got in the car with me and I took her back to where her friends. And I remember asking her, and I didn't even know why I asked her or phrased it this way or whatever. It just came out of my mouth. I said, "Is this what you want? Is this what liberation looks like for you? Like getting drunk and whipping beer bottles at the cop car? Like that's what our people being liberated looks like?" And she turned and looked me just straight in the face as if she just sobered up for just 3 seconds to say, "Yeah, sometimes." And it struck me as this most mind-blowing thing for me that I was like, "You know what? Yeah, fuck yeah, sometimes it does look like that." Because you know what? Whatever you like, who the fuck am I to say what your liberation is? And being able to say "fuck you" and whip a fucking beer bottle at a cop car, like, fuck yeah, right on.
We
From the cop before they fucking beat the shit out of you.
well, we
Skylar, that reminds me of it. It reminds. Sorry.
Sorry. Well, I was just gonna say, we spend a lot of time on the left sometimes criticizing tactics, all over the place. So it's interesting to hear that, yeah, everyone's version of liberation is going to look different. And I'm just going to take a second because our next guest here has a limited time that they can speak to us. But I think we're going to tie them in on this topic here because certainly, I'm sure.
If you don't mind, let me just give a quick goodbye because I've got a little baby in the next
Okay,
room.
Skylar.
Trying to put the other kids to bed here, so I am going to duck out. And I just want to say one thing, big meow to everybody. Thank you guys so much, and I hope to see you guys. And when shit hits the fan, I expect you guys to be standing shoulder to shoulder with me out in back lane. So, right on, guys. Yeah.
For sure, Skylar. The best to Layla and Billy and the rest of the family. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nikki! So Nikki Ashton has just joined the live stream. Or NDP. No one bashing the NDP while she's here, okay? So we welcome Nikki. Nikki is fierce. We've talked a lot about global solidarity. Nikki does a lot of work with Progressive International. We're so lucky to have you. We haven't had you on for an episode yet, but we will remedy that in the new year, won't we?
Absolutely. I would love that. 2023. So much to look forward to.
And what will we be talking about in 2023? What are you up to?
Well, I mean, I would love to talk about international solidarity. And I know that's something that you've been very passionate and outspoken about for a long time, Jessa. And I think it's something that we on the left need to, here in Canada at least, need to do a lot more of. I mean, we're seeing some incredibly inspiring left-wing movements, people's movements, make change around the world. If we look particularly to South America, I know I had a chance to speak with your teammate there and Santiago around what the incredible victory that we saw from Lula in Brazil, and what's happening in Latin America is incredibly inspiring. But there's incredible grassroots organizing happening around the world as well, and we need to be there. Progressive International is a great network to connect with progressive movements around the world, not just national movements, but local, regional movements as well. And I'm looking forward to a lot more work on that front, and bringing that work back to our communities here in Canada. I think that oftentimes, I come from northern Canada. I represent my home, the northern Manitoba, and a lot of times communities feel removed, isolated, far away from a lot of the their struggles seem to be far away from those that others are waging. But we need to find ways to connect these struggles, and you've been outspoken in doing that work, Jessa, in shining a light on struggles for Indigenous justice, workers' justice, feminist organizing. And I want to thank you for that. But it's clear to me that we need to keep building on that and keep building our international solidarity.
I see like Des is nodding along. She's also very smitten. I know a lot of us are really big Nikki fans. I'm sure you get that a lot when you come into leftist spaces, right? Like we have so very few heroes in the House of Commons. But Santiago, I really wanted to allow to chime in here, especially because not only did he do the article on Lula, but Santiago, what else are you working on that, Nikki would surely be interested in here?
I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better segue into this, to be honest, because we've been paying a lot of attention to what's been happening in Latin America, and I mean, when you look around the world and you see so few examples of left victories, and Latin America is the exception, right? I'm from Colombia. I recently elected for the first time in not just my lifetime, but multiple lifetimes, a leftist leader. And this is the exception, right? So we want to explore through Blueprints, through a series that we're calling Pueblos Unidos. We're going to be exploring social movements in Latin America that are behind all of these victories, and everything that goes into that, and why it's so different there. Why are we winning there and not winning in other places, and what lessons we can learn, right? Because in Canada, so often, like, the extent of where we look is the United States for international example of anything, right? And I feel like there's so much that we can learn from what's going on there. So yeah, that's something to be excited about for the New Year's for sure.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to tune in, and any spotlight that can be given in terms of the huge wins in Latin America, and also our responsibility as Canadians to know about them, because Canada is part of the problem in propping up right wing neo-fascist regimes, right, in Latin America. Our extractive industry is part of the problem there, right, and we're contributing to the pillaging of Indigenous lands, and relocations or dislocations of Indigenous peoples, and of course the climate catastrophe through what we're doing, right? So absolutely, we as Canadians should not only know step one, but also get involved to ensure that our solidarity is there with movements and now governments that are standing up for their peoples, and standing up to the West, right, and saying, enough is enough, right? We and taking a clear stand around justice, right, social, environmental, and economic justice. So I'm very, very excited about that. And I would say, I think there are also great things happening in the States, some incredible grassroots activism, back to the international front that we could be learning from, and we can also share some of the great work that's happened here in Canada recently. Jess, and I know you and I were talking about how inspiring QP Ontario's fight was very recently, and something we need to see a lot more of. Absolutely. But there's these flashpoints, right? You had land back. There's some really rad Indigenous activism happening across our country. There are these flashpoints, and we need to be able to connect the dots, and here within our own country, but absolutely internationally as well.
You're in a tough spot as the part of the opposition there, but and we talked a lot about electoral politics earlier on in the live stream, and I'm sure you know this, a lot of us are frustrated by electoral politics and as an avenue for change for the left, but you clearly have faith in that system. So tell us what maybe not, it chuckles, it's fading, but I mean, what role does the NDP have to play right now in this moment, in their current stature, in the movements and the responsibilities that you're talking about? Like, what can that party be doing right now?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that look, I think for those of us on the left, there's we think critically, and there are definite moments of frustration, and certainly in Canada there's no shortage. I mean, our country has been pulled so far to the right. There's no shortage of sources of frustration, and then you add to that an electoral system that is not reflective at all of people's will, the Canadian people's will, and I would say there's absolutely no shortage of moments where it's extremely frustrating, but we keep going because our communities keep going, because people continue to fight back, and we're standing up for our children, for our neighbors, for our communities, and we can't let up. Right. But what I would say is I've always drawn inspiration from the ground up. I think the NDP has a proud history of being a grassroots party, and we cannot forget that. And the direction that we take, the issues that we fight for, really have to be the kinds of issues that we're hearing from everyday Canadians, that they're, the issues that they're fighting for in whether it's in their communities and First Nations, in their workplaces, on the streets, and rather than sort of Ottawa knows best, which never leads to the kind of change that we need. So I'm always mindful of that, and it's no secret I'm a huge fan of Bernie Sanders. A quote of his that I always think back to, and I heard him say it at a incredibly inspiring rally I attended in Michigan years ago when he in his first round for president, and he said, when the people lead, the leaders follow. An incredibly humbling quote from a incredible political leader, right? But we know Bernie has helped build a movement of movements, and that's a vision that I think is it is clearly part of the NDP's history, and it's something that we ought to remind ourselves of, because there is some incredible organizing happening on the ground, and those are some of the issues that we need to be bringing forward in Parliament. The kind of bold, transformative vision we need to be bringing forward in Parliament. We're doing some very good work on a number of fronts, right? Obviously, there's the dental care piece. There's real work around anti-scab legislation, which is really important. But we know that there's so much more that needs to be done, and particularly transformative action. We are a country where the rich are only getting richer. The friends of the Liberals and the Conservatives, and they're getting rich on the backs of working people. We need to come in with a bold plan to tax the rich, and we know Canadians are behind that kind of a politic, and that's something that I think we need to keep pushing, and it's been important for me to do that as the tax the rich critic, I guess you could say, tax fairness critic. And we also need a bold vision when it comes to the climate emergency. We've seen the kinds of storms that have hit our country, the unprecedented extreme weather events. Northern Manitoba is no stranger to that. In fact, Northern Canada is seeing climate change at a speedier rate than the rest of the country. We just can't sit back and allow the Liberals to buy pipelines, build pipelines, and carry on and subsidize oil and gas anymore, right? And we can't afford it. Our kids can't afford it. And to me, it's really important that the NDP be a strong voice on that front, on Indigenous justice, ending the third world living conditions that exist on so many First Nations. When it comes to equity and fairness for working people, there's a long list, and there's so much more we can do. But I would say 2023 is probably going to be a very dynamic year. Who knows how long Justin Trudeau is going to be around? Who knows how long the kind of dynamics we have in the House. We know Pierre Poilievre is going on hard after the working class. We know that the Conservatives are keen to make inroads in regions like mine and across the country. And it's really important that we in the NDP be clear about our principles. And I would say, push to deliver for Canadians, and very importantly, push a bold vision for our country where we take on the big challenges of our time, like inequality, the climate emergency, and the rise of the far right.
Thank you, Nikki. I know Jay has a question for you as well. I told everyone to go a little bit easy on you. But
I have a bit of a different question for you. A lot of people over the last couple of years, well, since the start of the pandemic that I've talked to, a lot of activists, advocates who were involved in partisan politics started asking the question of if they were more effective in partisan politics or outside of it. And you are someone who, being an MP, that means you have constituents, you have responsibility, you have so many other factors to that. So as like a two-part question, how do you deal with the burnout, and how do you maintain the things outside of NDP focused talking points and stuff like that aren't necessarily individual to you? How do you keep your individuality and not get completely ground up?
Wow, that's heavy. I would say that maybe we could add that topic to the interview in 2023, along with international solidarity work. But I appreciate where you're coming from on that, Jay, and I want to cycle back as well, Jessa, to your kind words about me earlier on. It's a real honor to hear those words, and especially from friends and progressive activists. For me, I my center, right, in the work that I do is fighting for justice for the people that I represent, that I have the honor of representing, Indigenous communities, working class communities, communities that are incredibly resilient but face immense challenges, whether it's in terms of climate change, colonialism, racism, misogyny, and our part of the country is a part of the country that has given a lot of wealth to Canada, and so little of that wealth comes back to where we are, and particularly to Indigenous communities. And so I would say I draw inspiration from the fight that people in our north and across our region wage every single day, to fight for justice, to make things better for their kids, for their community, for all of us, and really, there's no time to rest. Now, I put in brackets, it's important to practice self-care, but there's no time, I would say, to lose hope. We have to keep going. And, and these struggles are obviously repeated across the country in so many ways. And so I always remind myself of where I come from as a Northern Manitoban, and who I represent. And it certainly helps me cut through the Ottawa bullshit, I would say, and keep focused on what matters. And I would say, I'm so passionate about international solidarity, because because we have a lot to learn that we can bring back to struggles in our own communities. But so many of the struggles waged here at home are very, are parallels to what's being waged around the world. I think of Palestine, for example, and the commonalities between Indigenous struggles for justice and the Palestinian struggle for justice against settler colonialism, right? And the list goes on as well. So all to say, I maintain that focus. But the other piece I would say is I think work outside of electoral politics is not just critical, but I think that is the source of direction, of energy, the ideas, the message, the agendas we're seeing from social movements, from the progressive organizing across the country. That is what should be shaping the work that we do politically on the left. And I was of course, as people know, no secret, when I ran for the leadership, a lot of people that never engaged in electoral politics signed up to be part of what we were building, and signed up to push forward the bold vision that we were putting forward. And I think that that's something that there's so much is so important for the NDP to take up, but it shouldn't be either or. Absolutely. And I would say, especially in times like these, where we're seeing the rise of the far right, for example, when we're seeing people be held back or pushed back in terms of um, corporate greed and the inflation crisis, we need to be doing everything that we can to work together across movements, across organize across the spectrum, and bring those voices into our electoral organizations and into our parliaments and legislatures across the country.
I see Anna's comment in the chat. Like, she definitely wants to hear more about that relationship between the international struggle and fighting that getting that structural change we need here. So, yeah, the lessons from South America episode that we did with Alex Moldovan is really what sparked that idea that Santiago, I'm sure that he had percolating for some time anyway, but that the main idea was that social movements be the driver of politics, just to make sure that like folks don't get left behind, that it's not just unbalanced representation that we often get up here. And I think that's really what's lacking, particularly on the left, if especially go back to earlier in the conversation where, despite our use of social media, we've not mobilized to the level that the right has, using the same tools we have at our disposal. So why not? Maybe successful social movements can help answer that, so I've done a few events that Progressive International has put on, and I very much enjoyed them. Not just for like the discussion it generates within the event, but also the idea behind global solidarity in general. Because I'm a big anti-nationalist. I think it holds us back in so many regards, in the same way that partisanship does. It's like we often think Canada is incapable of doing bad, and we don't question it enough because of our nationalist views, but we failed to see ourselves like at the international community. So it's really refreshing to have someone in office that isn't always Canada this and Canada that does recognize first Palestine. I mean, that's unique. We'll take a win there, but so much more than that. So I know you don't have a lot of time. I do appreciate you hopping on here, but so much gratitude for kind of going against the grain as much as you do in all the spaces that you are at, and I know that's tough, and we very much appreciate that kind of multifaceted approach that you have to resistance, well, it's seen.
Thank you so much, Jessa. Right back at you. Thank you for everything you do, and to Santiago and the whole team. And I look forward to us getting together in 2023 and talking a lot more about global solidarity and the way forward. Thank you so much, Jessa.
Thank you very much, Nikki.
Take care, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
We are just about like 10 minutes from the end of our live stream. So I want to take this time to kind of do a more traditional year-end wrap-up. We had all these things planned that we might talk about, but really we did want to hear from our guests. So I'm so excited that so many of them found the time to come in. Des and Anna, I'm going to go to Santiago first. You're going to be forced to think on your feet, and the ladies here can hear what the question is and prepare. He's like, what is it? What are you going to ask me? Like, what was your biggest lesson learned? Or, don't worry, I won't hold it to you later if you think of a better one. But I mean, like, what's a big lesson you took from 2022 that you are going to apply to 2023? So it's not a resolution, right? It doesn't have to be steadfast. Maybe less caffeine, but no. On all seriousness, like in keeping with the Blueprints of Disruption theme and having to listen to my voice and our guest voice for hours on end. You get anything from the show?
Oh, I mean, there's just so much that I took from the show, like I mean, I wouldn't be able to, off the top of my head, say any one lesson. And I almost think that that's, in a way, a good thing because it's like, it's so many lessons that I've learned over doing this because there's so many different ways that people are doing are doing things, right? And there is no one right answer, right? And
Maybe that's your lesson.
yeah, and that's such a, and I feel like a part of me did know that, but it's been reinstated, that I mean, I think the most important lesson I could take is that, like I don't have the answers. Nobody has any one answer, but we come together and we tell people the way that we've been doing things and the different avenues, and that inspires people in their own way to find their own answers, and somewhere along the lines, we start making things happen, right? Through the combination of all the different things, and that's, I think, the beautiful part about all of this, right? And even just like tonight, all of the different experiences that everyone's talked about and everyone brings, and it's
You, you had a good answer. Those were like two lessons you gave us. So very good job on your feet there. But Des, I saw you nodding, so you kind of like agree with Santiago there. We've done a lot of nodding on the show. I feel like if we just had like a still shot of all the little heads. Do you have a big takeaway?
There's like, I'm gonna be real with you. I cannot believe that 2023 is like in a couple of days, because it just feels like I like just processed the end half of 2019, and that 2022 just completely disappeared from underneath me. It genuinely just rattles me a bit. But the last couple of years has been an accumulation of learning and unlearning. It's so much unlearning, and then learning on top of that unlearning. And there's just, I don't think it ever fully stops. But I think one of the biggest things that I have had to force myself not only to really internalize, but to think about every day, is that all of the things that I'm working on in solidarity and in leftist politics, the things that I'm passionate about, I feel like in the left, some of the issues a lot of us take is that we get so overwhelmed by it because there's so much, there's problems when it comes to sexism and racism and transphobia and ableism and all of these other obstacles that we're constantly shouldering, and we're constantly putting ourselves in the spot of being the person who's responsible to fix it. And the lesson that I have learned is, yeah, I am responsible, but I'm not responsible alone. It's not just me that has to do it. I'm not picking everything up, carrying it like Atlas, and I'm not supposed to be the one that fixes everything, because there are people like all of you guys here and the guests that you've had tonight and the people who we've connected with and the people who I have had the incredible pleasure of being in solidarity with over the last couple of years. We all have the responsibility, and maybe it's heavy when we're holding it ourselves, but when we're all lifting it up together, we can throw it away. We can do it. And it's been something that I have to kind of repeat to myself, like, yes, it is my responsibility to fix climate change. Yes, it's my responsibility to fight for land back. Yes, it's my responsibility to call out racism directly when I see it, to call out ableism directly when I see it, to ask for accessibility to be there, even if I don't need it. It's my responsibility, but I should not, cannot, and I will not be the only person fighting for it. And that's something I think a lot of leftists sometimes forget, because we feel so responsible to fix things. Yeah, we are. But we're responsible together, and that's a beautiful thing.
I like that, and I think there's a lot of us that need to hear that, because I think, that's a big part of that burnout we talk about, is just the constant need to keep fighting. And if we stop fighting, it'll all crumble, or we're not doing our part, and it's just, we're not going to go anywhere if we're all burnt out and at our limits. So thank you for that, Des, and thank you for joining us this evening. I wish you and Tigra had gone on at the same time, but then we had like a little bit of Alberta. Oh, You're in Saskatchewan, aren't you? Well,
I'm in Saskatchewan. I'm literally a block away, a stone's throw. We're on Alberta time here.
all right. We had the prairies here all evening either way, but um Anna, what was your biggest lesson learned in 2022? It didn't have to come from our wonderful catalog of episodes, but just from your
Well,
work
I
even.
was just thinking about the stuff, like what Nikki was saying about international work, because a lot of the lessons I took this year. I mean, I spent a lot of time at home reading, right? And try to keep up in history. You know, she was saying some really important stuff about international connections. And I think, like, if we're being real with ourselves about the kind of change that is actually necessary, it's revolutionary change. I mean, like, there, and no revolution succeeds unless it's international. Capitalism is international. We need an international struggle to overthrow it. So when Nikki's talking about international struggle, I'm like, yeah. And having and this podcast, I really appreciate, because it builds organizational structure, Jessa. When things get really intense, and there's that split between the nationalists and the internationalists, right? Because socialism is an international, national. We're not nationalists, we're internationalists, right? And when people get confused and people are going to go in one direction or another, having organizational structure that provides hope and a program and a place for people to be methodical, so that it doesn't degenerate and become easy reactionary outlets, right? Because when things are out of break, it's like, like complex, was it chaos theory? The system either breaks or it jumps to a higher order of complexity, right? And that's why programs like yours and political parties that are genuinely committed to socialist change and to a stable society for all, make that difference. Because then when people don't know where to go, they've got a place, they've got structure to tie on to with an equity analysis and an anti-colonial and a materialist analysis, where there's like real, like it makes sense. It's not just it doesn't become random or reactionary like what we saw in Ottawa during the convoy, because that's the other direction that it can go. And so I think, like, I guess maybe the two lessons, one connecting to what Nikki was talking about, the necessity of building international organizations. That's something that's really come to me very strong this year, and the necessity of building educated, intellectually engaged organizational structures where people can go for guidance and find a place for direction. And I really appreciate you doing that, Jessa.
Thank you, Anna. I mean, the feeling's mutual with all the guests that come on here. I'm in awe of all the work that folks do. And yeah, I feel like I'm just doing the bare minimum most of the time, even though I am often in a state of burnout. So we're awful to ourselves, are we not? Like, jeez. But this show could be like therapy for me as well. Speaking of therapy, Jay, you're like my little therapy session half the time. I've learned so much working with you this year and the last few years, but I'd like to hear from you. What was your biggest lesson in 2022? Or was it all a blur?
It was a blur, but in all honesty, I learned how much of a hypocrite I am. So I talk about not perpetual planning, but I'm always planning. I learned that I talk about self care to others as I'm destroying myself. Like I learned the lesson more from my daughter, because we took part in more things. She was my campaign team for the municipal election. She helped me with supporting the education workers and so on. And in taking the time to make sure I instill the lessons that we can right now, I realized how much of the things I stopped focusing on. So, like, all three, everyone has talked about their lesson being um, something very specific, but it's such a grand statement because it's not one minor thing. When we talk about burnout, it affects everything: your personal life, your work, and so on and so on. When we talk about support and allyship, I learned the difference between patronage and solidarity. Like, and it all came from, I spent most of the last 2 years, 3 years, focused on educating others and teaching others that I stopped learning myself. And it's just how much of a hypocrite we can become because we care, we have empathy for others and we want to support and help others and protect others and fight with others and so on, but we get so focused that we completely lose ourselves. And like when I started the year, I had so much. I held so many positions in a partisan party. I was constantly fighting on so many different fronts, provincially and federally, and supporting people in every province and territory. And then when that stopped, when I resigned and I stepped back, I had like almost nothing. And it made me realize how much of my life I had given to everybody and all these causes and all of that, but I had not actually learned the lessons I should have, which was like the biggest thing is focused on teaching people about their individual power. And I stopped realizing how much power we have individually to take part as a group because I kept putting myself on all these different tables and not realizing that the damage I was doing to myself, I was damaging those things I was supporting because I wasn't able to give 100%, 100%. So basically, to boil it all down, I'm a hypocrite, but it's because normally, I think if I asked everyone who took part so far tonight and all the guests who have taken part, do you think you're a hypocrite? They couldn't honestly say no because it's about care about yourself and self-care and so on, but you never stop.
Yeah, I see, some comments in the YouTube chat there on self-care as well, but you do realize you're very hard on yourself. I mean, I am as well. So again, it's like telling other people to take care of yourself and not doing it. But, you know, yeah, you definitely are hard on yourself. Your contributions, even when you're not at 100%, Jay, are incredible in the tables that I've been at with you. So I guess I give you guys this tough question, and I don't know if I can actually answer it as we get ready to sign off. I feel like if I go through each episode, there were just like these really, a lot of them, pivotal moments where like light bulbs went off. I mean, Tim Ellis said a lot of things about organizing, and I've worked with him so many times, and still he just had to say it so simply. And I was like, yeah, like having fun with it. Um, or, just the role that allyship needs to play in a lot of these movements. But yeah, I think there was a lot of personal growth as well for me in terms of the podcast. I definitely came from a space where, I was dipping my toes in electoral politics and activism at the same time, and maybe not accomplishing as much as I wanted to. And with all the drama that I had to go through with the NDP, I would say like one of my biggest takeaways is that partisanship is just so fucking toxic. And I tried to drive that home, I think, in every single episode. I found a way to remind people that we're not getting enough done politically because we all have a squad to cheer for. And I've started to kind of veer away from that in interviewing some Green members. And obviously we had a Green candidate on here. And that's not to switch from party to party to party, but just a realization that we just have to go for the best possible outcome and be really self-critical of what we do. Like we do that in smaller spaces, you know, like Jay's always holding us to account. He's really good at that. You know, on your tactics and your approach, and Santiago as well. It's like really we bounce ideas off each other and we take feedback well, but we don't allow that same kind of discourse within partisan politics, and it's holding us back incredibly. So much so that I believe it is wasted energy at this moment. And I know that's really disappointing considering we just had an amazing person on here, Nikki Ashton. But I do believe that those amazing people could just accomplish so much more outside those spheres. But, you know, we've had a lot of guests on here, Skylar, a few of them reminding us that, you know, it's not either or, and that no one tactic can really be abandoned or criticized to the degree where it's not viable. But yeah, I think we've just experienced a lot of harm and lost potential. In the same way kind of poverty loses human potential, I truly believe partisan politics sucks political potential out of people and holds them back in their words and their actions. And so that definitely was my biggest takeaway, and a lesson I needed to learn so that I didn't continue to waste my energy in spaces that were, you know, actively harming me and causing me really a lot of distress and a lot of the people around me. So yeah, this was such a great night. Like we're 10 minutes over. I am going to sign off now because like my eyes are glazed over. I normally go to bed with my kids at like 7 if I can help it. But I felt like we did a really good job this evening. We remind ourselves this was our first live stream. This is our first year as a podcast and as a media cooperative. So we've given you some idea on where we're going, but it's really just a taste. Like Santiago and Jay can attest to the discussions that we have in our meetings, and we record some of them because we have all these grandiose ideas on one day you're going to watch the transformation of this little podcast into something that the left needs in media. Media has such a weird sound when we say it, right? It sounds too official for what we do, but a lot of shit disturbing is what we're going to do in 2023, and we're not going to do it without a big audience and the support of patrons and some great guests. So if you know great guests, send them our way, please. Like Blue BP of Disruption at Gmail. You can find us everywhere. You've now found us on YouTube. We're on Twitter, and obviously you can find our podcast anywhere. I mean, it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on all these other podcast streaming things that I can't even keep track of. And we're only able to broadcast that way because folks have actually taken out monthly subscriptions to support our work, so that, you know, the volunteer work that we put in doesn't cost us money. I mean, that's our goal now, and we will obviously expand beyond that. But yeah, a big thank you to the audience, the folks that chimed in on YouTube, and I saw the discussion going back and forth. That is really great. I see Ali, I saw Gemma on there, and a lot of people that have been really supportive of the podcast by sharing our posts. Like, not everyone can donate. I get that. I cannot hardly afford any monthly subscriptions at all. So sharing and just word of mouth is really how we're going to amplify all of those people that came through our studio today. It's not about really getting my voice out there. It's about, you know, exploring all the tactics that we need to disrupt capitalism and bring that political revolution, you know, Anna mentioned, and that we like to talk about on the show a lot, because we can't mince words, right? We're not trying to stick a Band-Aid on capitalism here. We really are trying to shake things up and burn it down if necessary. And I mean figuratively, but whatever, you know, for legal purposes. That was figurative, but especially if CSIS is listening. But yeah, so we've got a lot of goals. I hope you guys stay tuned to what the folks are going to be doing here at Rabble Rousers Cooperative. Blueprints is just going to be a tidbit of that. It's just what started us and put us together. So thank you again for joining us this evening. Do my fellow co-hosts have anything that they would like to say before we end our very first live stream? Without running us into another half an hour like us ADHers like to do.
I was just gonna make a smart ass comment about, I don't know if you noticed, but Santiago's caffeine finally just ran out.
No, that's impossible. He's got more.
I can get more. I can get more. But I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. That's enough caffeine. Sleep is good. We need sleep. It's getting there. It's getting
All
there.
right. Let's sign off then, all right? It's 9:15. We always end at least an hour late, so this will be a victory for us.
It's great.
Yes, thank you.
Late. Sometimes you have to be a little late.
You just can't cut some people off, man. Everyone had such great things to say, but yeah, I can only take these even lights for so long. I'm overstimulated as fuck right now. So
Yeah,
let's
I
all
feel
go
that.
to
We
bed.
made it right into the end until someone
Bye,
said fuck.
everybody.
No, are you kidding me? Skylar dropped F-bombs galore. But either way, we digress as we normally do. So good night, everyone, and stay safe and keep disrupting.
Have a good